Hi, I'm Mira. My boyfriend, Lopez, and I are the perfect match for each other. We have our ups and downs, but beyond that, we are good for each other. We love mysteries and games, and that was why we decided to stay at the Albertsons, Lopez's parents' beach house in Miami, before it is placed for sale. What we didn't realize was that we have to grow up. At the beach house, we had so much fun as usual. It was going as we had planned until we found this old safe. All we could see were pictures and nothing else. But these pictures isn't what we were expecting in the old crooked safe. We wanted more. But all we could lay our hands on were these old pictures. Do they worth the effort? You're about to find out. I, Bruno, my baby brother, and my papa live in the countryside. My mum died during Bruno's labor. It has then been my duty to take care of him. I was his mother figure. My father hadn't considered remarrying since then. I think he had considered it, but he might be scared of how I would react. But deeply, I don't care. My father works with a security agency at a multinational company not far away from home. Due to the nature of his job, he stays at work at night. So, when I was young, I spent most of the time with the Albertsons, our neighbors. Initially, Lopez and I were not on talking terms. I did visit the Albertsons' residence to play with Rodrigo, my only friend. People might think we might end up dating, but we are too close to be dating. Rodrigo is my very good friend. We planned everything together. We never made any decision behind each other. As kids, we had our own rules and codes which were still effective until recently. We needed to grow up. Rodrigo was a smart kid and his vision was to become a scientist. He got us into a lot of trouble with his little science projects. Lopez was quite older than us. He never participated in our games, and it looked like he and his little brother aren't close. Not a bit. They did fight over every little thing. Lopez was 2 years our senior, and he only talked with people of his caliber. I looked older than his age, and he is a lot mature, but he easily gets himself into conflict. I didn't like him at all, and Rodrigo did tell me a lot about him. I knew I sickened him, and he disgusted me too. Lopez wasn't as smart as his little brother, which made him get some harsh responses from his parents. But he is good at playing football. The coach once told the school that he had a great future ahead of him if he keep up the pace. We always anticipate a holiday. The Albertsons and I spend the holiday at their beach house in Miami. My father would take Bruno to Aunt Nina's to spend the break. At the beach house, we had more space for our little experiment, and it was convenient to blow things up. Lopez did go to the beach to party. He was never at home. Mr. and Mrs. Albertson tried varieties of things. They tried yoga and some weird religious practices. Lopez and I wondered how they enjoyed those things. The only thing they did that we are fans of is the different types of cocktails they made. As kids, we would take some sips whenever the duo wasn't looking. Mrs. Albertson was a very good cook. She loves to bake as well. She made her recipes. I did assist her in the kitchen. During those times, we did have a heart-to-heart discussion. The beach house was our haven. Lopez and I started tying knots when Rodrigo and I were in grade 10 and Lopez was in his finals. I was at their place that afternoon to see Rodrigo. I went to Rodrigo's room, but he wasn't there. I looked around the house but could not find Rodrigo. I then decided to go check for him in the backyard. As I opened the door to the backyard, I was Lopez swimming in the swimming pool. He was flabbergasted to see me. I didn't notice a thing until I saw him covering his rear with his 2 hands. He asked me to turn around, and I obeyed immediately. "What are you looking for?" he asked with a shaky voice. "I am here looking for Rodrigo. I didn't know you would be here," I responded. "As you can see, Rodrigo isn't home," he rejoined. I was about to leave the backyard when he called on me. "Please help me with my underpants that is on the line," he requested of me. I got the underpants, trying my possible best to look back. I threw the underpants, but my aim was poor. It fell in the water. Lopez had to swim to get it. The underpants were wet, but he didn't have any other choice but to wear them like that. I was still standing with my back turned towards the Lopez and my right hands on my face. He came out of the pool and tapped me. I was startled and looked at him. He is a tall and well-built young man. "Thank you," he said, pointing to the wet underpants. "I am sorry," I responded. He left me behind and found his way to the main building. That wasn't surprising. He does that a lot. Since Lopez wasn't home, I left the Albertsons' residence. I texted Rodrigo, who didn't reply to my message. I should be worried because that would be the first time he would ever go out without telling me first, but the scene with Lopez was on my mind. I couldn't get it off my mind. Rodrigo called me later and apologized. I wasn't interested in his plea. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Lopez. I couldn't believe that I was smiling. Am I in love with Lopez? No, this can't be happening. Even if I showed my advances, Lopez would not even look at my side. And if he does, Rodrigo might not talk to me again for having intimate affairs with his brother. And I can't afford to lose Rodrigo. I had spent my whole life with Rodrigo. Getting separated from him would hurt both of us. I don't want to be the cause of our parting. I tried to get Lopez off my mind by spending the night talking about life with Papa. I slept off after a few hours discussing life in Mexico. From that moment henceforth, I tried showing my intentions to Lopez. He wasn't even looking at my side. Rodrigo may have noticed because he had been acting kind of funny, but he didn't say anything. After several trials, he took up the courage to ask him out physically. He just looked at me and walked away, leaving me standing. It was as if I was not there. From that day on, he would just smile whenever he set his eyes on me. Was he impressed, or he was making fun of me? Lopez and his classmates were preparing for their prom, and my class was also trying to create an event for the end of the year. I and Rodrigo were also busy trying to pull stuff. All our effort were futile since all Rodrigo could pull was not social enough. Eventually, my class settled for a kissing booth. Lopez was nowhere to be found. I think he wanted to look best for his prom. The day of the prom had come. I persuaded Rodrigo to attend so that I could see the graduating boy. Rodrigo was reluctant at first but obeyed our rule number 5. Do not let down your bestie's request. At the hall, Lopez's classmate came in twos, male and female except for Lopez. He was the only single guy at the party. I felt sorry for him, but my hands are tied. For the first time in a long time, he recognized us. He kept waving his hands at us at every opportunity. He took some photos with us. That night, Lopez and Rodrigo had their first brother thing. They had several shots, joked, and played some manly games. Eventually, the two of them got drunk. I had to help the two brothers home. It wasn't easy. I got a taxi and got them home safe. At their place, I assisted Rodrigo to his room first. The boy slept off immediately. I came down to help Lopez to his room. Lopez was so drunk that he was just speaking gibberish. He laughed more often. We eventually made it to his bed. I dropped him. As I was about to take my leave, he held my hand and murmured some words which I didn't understand. I successfully left his room. I called Papa, telling him I won't be coming home that night. He was fine with it. I made myself comfortable on the sofa. I didn't know when I slept off. The next morning, Lopez was the one to wake me up. "Thank you for yesterday," he said as he grinned. Before I could say "you're welcome," he left for the swimming pool in their backyard. Rodrigo followed him. He was still hanging over the previous night's drunkenness. He sat beside me on the sofa, crossed his hand around my neck. "I love you," he said. "You will forever be my best friend." Oh, what a relief. I can't imagine dating Rodrigo. After skipping through various TV channels, he eventually decided to join his brother at the swimming pool. Mrs. Albertson came downstairs, greeted me, and headed straight to the kitchen. I followed her immediately. We chatted a little as we cooked for the boys. Most of the discussion that day was about boys. I didn't feel comfortable, but I enjoyed it. Mrs. Albertson had been the closest thing I had to a mother since my mum died from Bruno's labor. She is always there for me. After the cooking, I summoned the courage to join the boys at the poolside. To my surprise, the two boys were having fun. Wow, that was amazing. I stood at the poolside, trying to join in the ongoing moment, unknowing to me. Rodrigo pulled me into the pool. My dress got wet, but I love it too. It was a day I would never forget. After the whole fun, Mrs. Albertson served us our meal. Everyone ate and Lopez joined in our stupid games. He was not good at following rules. He cheated his ways to victory every time, but we didn't care. It was fun for us. Bruno came looking for me, but instead of telling Papa had called upon me, he made himself at home and started playing video games. The day was fun. Bruno and I got home later that evening. Papa wasn't home, but he left a letter behind. He had gone for his security duties. I cooked before leaving. We served ourselves, had a little of siblings' jiffy before going to bed. On my bed, I was exultant. I took my phone and started chatting with Rodrigo. We chat for quite a time before saying our goodbyes. I slept off instantly. I was very tired from the day's activities. After an incredible weekend, it was time to prepare for the kissing booth. My class pulls this off. Rodrigo got a kiss from her dream girl, Lara. It seems she also had a crush on the guy. I was quite jealous. All my classmates had been paired with their secret lovers. It was my time to receive the surprise kiss. I was blindfolded and I was meant to wait. I waited longer than usual. I was about to lose hope when someone drew my head closer to give me a passionate kiss. This is surely Rodrigo, I said to myself. I was so thankful then I remembered Rodrigo had never kissed before. He can't be this good, and more so this fellow was quite sporty. Unlike my Rodrigo. I took of the fold and lo, it was Lopez. Everyone was cheering us up. I caught the big fish. A graduating student gave me a surprise kiss. After the passionate kiss, Lopez then asked me, "Will you be my girlfriend?" I wanted to say yes, but when I looked at the audience, Rodrigo is gone. And Lara shrugged, realizing I was looking for Rodrigo. I couldn't say yes, even though I wanted to. I left at once looking for Rodrigo. I eventually found Rodrigo alone at the cafeteria. I guessed he wasn't too happy with the show. I can't blame you. I would have done the same thing if I was to be in his shoes. I sat beside him. We didn't speak for a while. Then I said, "Rule number 13, be happy for each other no matter the situation." He looked at me in dismay and there was silence once more. Finally, he spoke. "This isn't right," he said. "You can't be in an affair with my brother. It is going to affect our friendship. It is going to be weird seeing for kiss my brother while we sit side by side. I thought he was your big brother too." He kept talking. I thought he wasn't going to stop and I would just stay muted and listen to him all night. Then I heard, "Don't you have anything to say?" Oh, finally, it is my time to say something, but there is nothing for me to say. I summoned some courage and told him that I guess Lopez likes me. "Do you like him?" he revolted. I think I responded slimily. "Since when has this been going on?" he asked once more. "Tonight," I answered. He looked at my face and said, "I am happy for you, but you should have told me earlier. Let's go celebrate." Lippy. I almost jumped off my feet. But I kept cool. On our way back to where the event was taking place, we met Lara, who was looking around for her newly found boyfriend. Lara was the shy one and she barely talked. But I guessed, the two are united by science. Those are the best two in the class. Funny enough, they don't compete. Rodrigo introduced Lara to me as if we had never met before. "Lara, this is Mira, my best friend, and Mira, this is Lara, my girlfriend." Lara looked at him in awe while I laughed. I couldn't believe what I just heard. Lara rested on him and he crossed his hand around her neck. While that was going on, Lopez showed. He smiled at his little brother, who could not pretend he is disappointed. Then he came for me. He took me by the hand and said, "Hi guys, who cares for some drink?" "Don't get me drunk like the last time," exclaimed Rodrigo. Things were going on fine between us until it was time for Lopez to go to college. There was this unhappiness within me. Rodrigo didn't care. He spent most of his time with Lara now. I am happy for them. But it was my time to be lonely. Lopez promised me he would call every day. I pretended to be fine with the suggestion, but I would miss my newly found soulmate. As promised, Lopez keeps the tab every day. It has now become a routine. We always talked about how we spent our days. He talked about his newly found friends. Lopez's new clique is made up of 3 other boys and a girl. I requested for their picture, which he sent without asking him twice. There I saw Happy. You can't believe it. If Happy had competed for Ms. World, she would have won. She's the most beautiful creature I had set my eyes on in the last 17 years of my life. I wouldn't have suspected anything if the lady was sitting a yard away from my Lopez. But instead, she was sitting right next to him with her hands all over Lopez. I started getting suspicious of Lopez. Who would want to start honestly with a high school guy when you have a beautiful college girl within your reach? No one, and this time, not even Lopez would. I asked him who she was. He said they're just friends. I wanted to believe him, but I didn't believe him. Who would have believed such things? I called him a liar and stopped talking to him. I called and texted, but I didn't respond. Time had passed. Rodrigo and Lara are doing very fine. Lopez and I had not talked for a while now. We are now in our finals. It was time for our prom. Being single felt weird. Lopez and Lara had gotten admission into the same college. I was still keeping my admission on hold. I wanted to be a lawyer, not a science guru like those two. And our rule number 4 is to attend the same college. I wanted to go to the same college as Rodrigo, who had been adamant about it, but I have a career to pursue myself. I had to lie to him that I had chosen the same college as his. He was very happy that he hugged me. I told him not to tell anyone yet since I want to surprise others. It didn't make sense to him, but he obliged. The other college is the same as Lopez. I think a little part of me was still with him. Prom was fast approaching. I had a dance competition to perform in. I had been paired with Wilson. Wilson was really good. I would have loved to partner with Rodrigo, but he had been his usual self since he met Lara. We still talked, but not as we used to. So, I had to settle for Wilson. Wilson seemed cool, and there was nothing between us. Little did I know that this guy really liked me, or he might just be infatuated. At the dance competition, we were the last to be called upon. Towards the end of our performance, the audience had started applauding us. After the last move, Wilson kissed me. I played along because I didn't want to embarrass him on stage. While I was deep in the kiss, I saw a figure standing up from the stands and left. I recognized that person. That was Lopez for sure. I rushed up the presentation and ran after him. I looked everywhere but could not find him. Then hello. A female voice from behind said. I looked back. It was Happy. So, Lopez came from my presentation with her little girlfriend. I looked at her as if she fell in a pit filled with swine shit. To my surprise, she didn't react at all. She smiled at me and stretched his hand for a handshake. We shook hands and she requested of me if we could talk. Yes, I said reluctantly. I wasn't comfortable with the discussion because she was speaking to me as if she was my elder sister. Then she asked the big question. Have you moved on? I looked at her face. We are here today because Lopez wanted me to see her little girlfriend that stopped talking to him because of me. Lopez had said a lot about you and I wanted to see it for myself. I was disappointed in myself. I hadn't moved on, I replied. The guy, Wilson, we aren't dating. It was part of the performance. To kiss, she exclaimed. Wilson added, we didn't practice that, I replied. Where is Lopez? I asked her in quite a hurry. I don't know, she replied. I don't know anywhere here. Do you mind taking me around? We stood up and took a walk. Even though we came first, I missed the award presentation. I didn't care anymore. I wanted to reconcile with Lopez as soon as possible. We ended up at a bar. She demanded we take a few shots. I couldn't decline. We started with dry gin till we get to vodka. This girl is good. If addiction is a polite word, I would have used it, but it isn't. We competed and I lost on every count. We built a close relationship within hours. While we are having a splendid time, Rodrigo, Lara, and Lopez came by. Lara and Rodrigo came close while Lopez stayed in a distance. I guessed he was still angry after the show I made. I walked towards him, gave him a peck and whispered in his ears, there is nothing between me and that guy. He said, if I see that guy, I promised, I am going to punch him in the face. I love you, I replied instead. He grinned as I dragged him towards the others. We had a night of our lives. Happy left the next morning. Guessed Lopez would be staying home for Christmas. We were enjoying the break. I and Lopez finally had our intimate moment. The young man is good. I stayed in his place for a week straight. This Christmas, Bruno will be staying at home. He is now 10. He told Papa that he is old enough. He wanted to go camping with his best friend, a girl. Papa was fine with it. I got suspicious, but did not need my advice on this one. I got home after a week. I missed my little brother. I wanted to see how he was doing. The little guy didn't need me around anymore. He was doing the cooking, washing, and setting the house all by himself. I asked him how he pulled this off, all by himself. He told me that when I was not at home, Papa had been seeing a nice lady. She helped a lot at home and she taught me some things. Papa was going to ask you if he should propose to her, he continued. There was this mixed feeling within me. I was happy for him, but introducing a new person to the family feels weird. Bruno was fine with this. I would soon be going to college. Someone has to take care of Bruno while I am away. I sighed. The house looked different. I couldn't find things where I had known them to be. My time in this house is almost over, I guessed. I got to the cabinet to get myself something to eat. I was about to sit down and grab the remote when Papa showed up. He settled down a while from the night's job before initiating a discussion on the new lady. Her name is Doris, he mentioned. She is a nice lady. He continued. I wasn't comfortable discussing my father's wife to be with him. He did all the talking. He told him he would be going on a date with her, where he would propose to her. Can I go ahead? He asked. Yes, of course, if you like her. Moreover, Bruno does, I replied. I eventually found a good reason to flee. The next morning I came back home. No one was home except for Doris. I was shocked, so she had started sleeping over. She introduced herself and we exchanged regards. She was quite nice as aforementioned by Bruno. Although there was this weird silence in the house, we tried to converse a little. While we were both enjoying the TV program, Papa showed up in a new coat. He said he and Doris are going on a date. As he was about to leave, he asked me to wish them luck. Good luck and have fun, I responded. Doris waved and grinned at me as the duo left for their date. I was about to rest when I received Rodrigo's message. It reads, We are off to the beach house. Are you in? This was the perfect excuse I needed to provide privacy from my dad and his new butterfly. I quickly got some stuff packed in a small box, dropped a note for Bruno to say goodbye, and left the house. The Albertsons wanted to put the beach house on sale since they would be retiring soon and all their kids will be going to college. No one would be visiting the beach house anymore. Lopez suggested we had a meeting with them. At the meeting, the two made known their plans. Rodrigo and Lopez were able to convince them. They said their parents should permit us to stay for a while. During the stay at the place, we would take care of the place and make it perfect for sale to attract wealthy buyers. Mr. and Mrs. Albertson agreed to it. We enjoyed our stay at the beach house. Rodrigo and I unraveled all we had done when we were kids while Lopez and I made love at night. Laura also came to visit. We all joined the big party at the beach. Wilson also came around. This is weird. Lopez suspected I was the one who invited him. I told him I was not the one. Things got on the tension between Lopez and Wilson. I had to beg Wilson to leave, even though it was against his will. He left. Again there was peace. After a while, we were tired of fun as we prepared for college and make the house ready for sale. Laura had left for his parents' place. Papa does call sometimes. He is doing fine with Doris and Bruno was enjoying himself. While we were arranging the house, we saw an old safe. Lopez carried it out. It was made of metal and it had a lock. Rodrigo and Lopez tried calling their parents as regards the sacred old safe. They didn't say. They concluded that it might be there before the Albertsons bought the beach house. This news spurs the two brothers to make a heist, their first to be precise. They tried cutting off the lock but to no avail. Rodrigo was tired of the stress, while Lopez was angry about him unable to open the safe. They later found out that what was in will remain in, if they tried any more stupid things. After thorough attempts, they decided to get a lock specialist. On the day of the heist, the lock specialist came. He didn't look like someone that could pull such a thing. He was just a nerd. She even came along with a Scotch bag. At first we thought he had his tools in the bag but later we found out the bag was empty. He just loves carrying that bag. He started tending to the safe. The guy is good. He opened the safe just within 5 minutes. We expected to see some antiques, cash or precious stones. The lock guy opened the safe and hissed. He adjusted his glasses and went to Lopez to collect his cash. He left immediately. I guessed he was disappointed. Lopez and Rodrigo rushed to the safe to open it. What is this? Shouted Lopez. Our childhood photos. Is this a joke? Rodrigo went forward and started checking through the pictures. He was enjoying himself. I moved forward and joined him. We both enjoyed the pictures. We made jest over it. It was fun for us but it wasn't for Lopez. He was angry because he just wasted some cash on an old safe filled with memories. We are happy after this event. We placed the house on sale, and we had concluded to move on. Rodrigo and Lara moved forward with their school, while I followed Lopez to his college. It was a happy ending for everyone and we realized we needed to move on. I reunited with Happy and Lopez introduced me to the rest of the crew. Lopez had learned to control his anger issue. Today, we still joke about the old safe, The mystery is that, who kept our childhood photos in a safe and locked them? That we don't know. All we knew was that we had beautiful childhood that we can't return to anymore. So sad, but we have to grow up. We have to grow up. Evan sat at the desk that was at the back of the class. No student was sitting beside or close to Evan. He just sat down on his own. He deliberately sat there because he was not interested in what Mr. Mike was teaching. He always finds her class very boring. If Evan had the chance, he would not even attend Mr. Mike's class. After Mr. Mike finished writing on the board, he turned to the class to explain what he wrote. But before the explanation of the note, he has a new student in his class that he wants to introduce. Mr. Mike told the class to listen up. He said he wants all of them to meet Leah. He told them Leah is a new student who just joined their school. He told them Edward came from New York. Evan and the whole class looked up at the new student who was standing close to Mr. Mike. When Mr. Mike noticed that he had the attention of all the students, he told me to introduce myself to the class. For a few seconds, I couldn't talk because I was shy. Mr. Mike told me that I have to be bold and courageous. After much persuasion from Mr. Mike, I began to introduce myself. I am 18 years old. I was born and raised in New York. I have a brother and a sister who are both in college. I came here because my father was transferred to this city, so we had to leave New York. I didn't want to leave New York, but since my parents were leaving, I had no option but to follow them. Mr. Mike told me that I will enjoy my stay in the school. He told me that many students in the school came from other states. After the introduction, Mr. Mike told me to find a seat. I looked everywhere, but every seat had a student sitting on it. The only vacant seat was Evan's seat. Mr. Mike told me to go and sit close to Evan's. When I was making my way to the seat, some students were nodding in disapproval. They didn't want me to sit close to Evan, but there was no empty desk, so I had no choice but to sit close to Evan. When I sat close to Evan, I asked him why he was sitting alone. He said he likes sitting alone. He said students don't like sitting close to him because he likes sitting at the back. As soon as Leah took her seat, Mr. Mike started the explanation of the note that was on the board. After some hours, the school timekeeper rang the bell for recess. Evan took his jacket and walked out of the class. As he was walking, he heard someone calling his name. He looked back and saw me. He was surprised to hear me calling his name. He walked back to where I was standing to listen to what I had to say. I told him that I just wanted to let him know that if everyone in the class decides not to sit close to him, I will continue to sit close to him. Evan was surprised that someone could show him love in a class that people used to stay away from him. He was very happy to hear what I said, to the extent that he pleaded with me that I should follow him to the school restaurant. I obliged. Evan and I went to the school restaurant and ate together. After 45 minutes, the bell was rung for the end of the recess. When Evan returned to class, he noticed that everybody in the class was looking at him. They were surprised how quickly he has bonded with Leah. Everybody in the class knew Evan as someone that was very quiet and reserved. They know him as someone that hardly talks in class. How he was able to quickly form a bond with a new student remained a mystery to them. A few minutes to the end of the day activities, Mr. Mike came to the class and informed us that the next day is Parents' Convention Day. He told us that our parents to attend the convention. He told us that any student that does not have any representative at the convention will be punished according to the constitution of the school. After disseminating the information, he told us that we can start going to our houses. When we went out of the class, Evan walked up to me. He asked me if my parents were going to attend the parents' convention. I told him that I was not sure if my parents were going to attend the convention, because I am not sure if they were aware. Evan said that is true. I told Evans that I will inform my parents when I get home. I told him that their attendance at the convention will be based on their availability the next day. I asked Evan if his parents were going to attend the convention. Evan said he is sure that his parent will attend the convention, because they have been told since 7 days ago. He said his parent had no excuse. I told Evans that I will be happy if Evan's parents show up because she will like to meet them. Evan promised to introduce me to his parents if they show up at the convention. Evan also said he will like to meet my parents if they show up at the parents' convention. I told him that I will personally introduce him to my parents if they eventually show up at the convention. Evan and I continued our conversation until we got to the motor park where we were to board the bus that will take us to our houses. I have had a great day with you, Evan said. Me too, I replied. We waved one other goodbye and each one of us entered different buses. When I got home, I told my parent that my school was going to hold a parent convention the next day, and the school told us that every student must be represented. My father said he doesn't know about it and he is not sure if he will be able to attend. I was not happy with my father's decision. I started persuading my father. I reminded him that I am a new student in the school and I do not want to be punished. I told my father that I don't want to set a bad record too. After much persuasion, my parents agreed that they will attend the convention. I jumped up in happiness and embraced my parents. I was very happy because I knew that I will be able to introduce my parents to Evan. The next day, I woke up very early and immediately went to the bathroom. I took my bath very quickly and put on my school uniform. When my father woke up, he was very surprised to see me in my school uniform as early as 6 a.m. "Why are you dressed up so quickly?" my father asked. I told him I woke up very early and I decided to get myself ready for school since I do not have any house chores to do. My father told me that I have to wait for him and my mother to take their bath. He said he will drive me to school himself. After about an hour, my parents were ready. My father called me from my room and told me to meet him in the car. I entered the car with my parents, and we drove off. 15 minutes later, we arrived at my school. The school security men led my parents to the convention ground while I was told to go to my class. When I entered the class, I met Evan at his usual seat. I went to Evan and greeted him. Evan responded and he noticed a great smile on my face. Evan asked me the reason for the smile. I told him that I was smiling because I was able to persuade my parents to attend the convention. On hearing that, Evan smiled also. I asked Evan if his parents were able to attend too. Evan said his parents were already at the convention ground. The convention lasted for 2 hours. Parents were briefed about their children's academic performance, and many other things. When the convention ended, we were allowed to go and see our parents for a few minutes. I took Evan to my parents. I told my parents that Evan is my classmate. I explained how Evan helped me settle down on my first day in school to my parents. My parents praised Evan and advised him to face his academics squarely and come out in flying colors. They told him he is free to visit me at our house whenever he wishes. Evan and I immediately left and ran to where Evan's parents were standing. Evan introduced me to his parents and told them how friendly I was. He told them how I accepted to sit close to him in class when everyone else didn't want to sit close to him. Evan's parents appreciated me and advised me to be serious with my academics. Evan and I introduced our parents to themselves. After the introduction, our parents left and Evan and I walked back to our class. Our friendship continued to grow stronger. We became very close friends and we began to do everything together. Everybody in the school noticed how close Evan and I were. As days went by, Evan and I began to generate emotional feelings for each other, but none of us dared to express our feelings. My birthday was fast approaching, and I told Evan that I will want him to celebrate my birthday with me. I told him my friend Aurora will also join us in the celebration. I told him that the birthday celebration will hold in a public mall. I told him that my parents will be there too. On the day of my birthday, I called Evan to meet me at St. George Mall. I told him that my parents, Aurora and I will join him soon. Evan left his house and headed to St. George Mall. When he arrived at the mall, we were already there waiting for him. We welcomed him and he took his seat. There was a lot of food and drinks to eat. While we were eating, Evan and I couldn't take our eyes off each other. A few minutes after, I excused herself. I told them that I want to use the bathroom. When I entered the bathroom, I locked the door. After easing myself, I could not open the door because it was locked. I started screaming for help, but there was no help in sight. After waiting for minutes for me to return and I did not, Evan stood up to check up on me. When he got to the bathroom area, he started calling my name. I quickly replied as I was happy that help was in sight. "Where are you?" Evan asked. "I am in the bathroom. I have been trying to open the door, but it seems the door is locked." Evan came to the bathroom door and helped me open it. "Thank you very much," I said. I told him that I have been stuck in the bathroom since I left them. I hugged Evan passionately and kissed him. Evan kissed me back. It seems like the perfect opportunity, that both of us to have some intimate kissing. The kissing continued to the extent that we had to lock the door again so that passers-by would not see us. When my parents waited for some time without seeing Evan and me, they sent Aurora to go and check upon us. When she got in front of the bathroom, she heard whispering in the bathroom. She thought something was going on in the bathroom, so she quickly returned. When my parents asked about Evan and me, she told them that I was still in the bathroom while Evan is chatting with his old-time friend he met at the mall. We continued the sex till they both came. We quickly cleaned up and joined the rest of the people that have been waiting for us. I thought the outing was a perfect opportunity to know more about Evan. Most of the talk we usually had in school was not too deep. I didn't know about Evan's family background even though I have met his parents. I don't know his hobbies, his likes and dislikes, and many other things. So tell me about your family, I asked. I have a brother and a sister. Both of them are in college. My brother is studying physics while my sister is studying statistics. My brother is in his 3rd year in college, while my sister is in her 1st year. My father works as a doctor while my mother is a pharmacist. That's impressive, I said. So you are from a family of medical personnel. Tell me about your family too, Evan said. I have 2 brothers. Both of them are out of college. My elder brother studied chemistry while my immediate brother studied economics. My father and my mother are lawyers. Oh, good. So you are from a family of legal practitioners. I am sure you are also considering becoming a lawyer, Evan said. Maybe, Leah said. So tell me what your hobbies are. I want to know them, Leah asked. My hobbies are watching football, traveling, reading, and watching movies. You said you like watching football. Which football team is your favorite? Leah asked. I love many teams, but Real Madrid is my favorite. I love Real Madrid Football Club because of Cristiano Ronaldo. He is a very good player and a great goal scorer. I will name my male child after him because of the love I have for him. He is the reason Real Madrid won 3 Champions League consecutively. It is a feat that no other club has ever achieved. So you said you love reading too. So tell me the types of books you have read. Evan said I have read many books. The books I love reading most are comics and sports books. I love sports books because they educate me on the current news in sports. I also love comic books because they make me laugh. I love reading comic books when I am alone and bored. They usually make me laugh and make me forget that I am alone. They help me cope with boredom. Most times, I am always at home alone when I leave school. So I need something that will chase boredom away. That was what led me to comic books, and I have become a fan since then. So tell me about the types of books you like to read, Evan asked. Leah said I love romantic books. I love a book that is filled with romance. I know you are romantic, Evan said. So tell me about your type of movies, Lisa asked. Evan replied by saying I like comedy movies. I loved movies that will make me laugh and forget what I am going through at that particular time. So tell me about the types of your movie too, Leah asked. Leah replied by saying I love romantic movies the same way I love romantic books. I am not a big fan of romantic movies because they make me emotional. Most times the movies are made excessively long so that viewers can continue watching them. I don't like them because the movies are designed to make people attached to them. If you start watching it, you wouldn't want to stop, and that's the way the movies are designed. As for me, I prefer comic movies that will make me laugh and forget whatever I am going through. You said you love listening to music, so let us talk about music, Leah said. Tell me the types of songs you listen to and your favorite artists. I am a big fan of R&B songs. I love R&B songs because they usually have a lot of strong lyrics. So tell me who your favorite artists are in the R&B category. Evan replied by saying I follow a lot of artists in the R&B category. I love almost all of them, Leah said. Even if you love all of them, there are 1 or 2 of them that you will love more than others. Yes, that is true, Evan said. I think I love R. Kelly and Usher. Good, Leah said. Now, you have to list at least 15 songs of your favorites before I can agree that you are a big R&B fan. Okay, I agree. Let me begin with R. Kelly. Some of his songs that I know are I Believe I Can Fly, The Same Girl, It Seems That You Are Ready, I'm a Flirt, Down Low, Trapped in the Closet, If I Could Turn Back the Hands of Time, Fiesta, Sex Planet, I Wish, You Remind Me of Something, and Half on a Baby. Now, let me move to Usher, Evan said. Some of his songs that I know are Yeah, My Boo, DJ Got Us Falling in Love. I Don't Mind, OMG, You Got It Bad, You Remind Me. Love in This Club, Confessions, Nice and Slow. Don't Waste My Time, No Limit, Lovers and Friends. You Don't Have to Call. And Bad Habits. Leah said, now I agree that you are a big fan of R&B. Evan looked at Leah and laughed. Now, tell me about your favorite artist too, Evan asked. As for me, I am a big fan of Alicia Keys and Justin Bieber, Leah said. I love their songs so much. They always inspire me with their songs. Just like you said, it is your dream to watch a football match in Santiago. It is also my dream to meet Alicia Keys, Beyoncé, and Justin Bieber in person. Evan laughed and said, I know you will meet them soon. I am also giving you the assignment you gave me, Evan told Leah. You are also going to mention 15 of Alicia Keys, Beyoncé, and Justin Bieber's songs for me to accept that you are a big fan of them. Leah laughed and said, I accept the challenge. Leah said, some of Alicia Keys' songs that I know are If I Don't Get You, No One, My Boo, Girl on Fire, Falling, Empire State of Mind, You Don't Know My Name, Try Sleeping with a Broken Heart, A Woman's Worth, Gramercy Park, This Girl Is on Fire, Brand New Me, Superwoman, We Are Here, Show Me Love, and Wasted Energy. I am impressed, Evan said. But you have to list Justin's and Beyoncé's songs before I give you your award. Okay, Leah said. Leah said, I know a lot of Justin's songs because he is from the younger generation. I will mention more than 20 of his songs. Okay, I am listening, Evan said. Leah said, Justin Bieber's songs that I know are Nothing Like Us, Monster, Love Me, That Should Be Me, Never Say Never, One Less Lonely Girl, As Long As You Love Me, 10, 0 Hours, Off My Face, What Do You Mean, All I Want for Christmas Is You, Lonely, Intentions, Baby, Ghost, Stuck With You, Beauty and a Beat, Boyfriend, Too Much, Peaches, and Stay. I know a lot of songs that Beyoncé sang too because she inspires a lot of young girls like me. A lot of young girls like me look up to her and want to achieve what she has achieved. She is a perfect definition of what a 21st century woman should be. Some of her songs that I know are Bills, Crazy in Love, Say My Name, Single Ladies, Run the World, Brown Skin Girl, Love on Top, Listen, Brown Eyes, Formation, Already, Naughty Girl, Partition, Dance for You, The Best Thing I Ever Had, Drunk in Love, Lose My Breath, Cater to You, Soldier, Baby Boy, Party, and Halo. Wow, Evan said. Now I believe that you are a fan of these artists you have mentioned. I hope you get to see them very soon. Thanks, Leah replied. I hope you also fulfill your dream of watching Real Madrid live at the Santiago Stadium very soon. They ended their conversation and every one of them left the gathering. When Aurora saw Leah the next day, she asked her what happened between her and Evan in the bathroom. Leah was shocked. She started thinking with her whether Aurora saw what happened in the bathroom. But she denied it and told Aurora that nothing happened.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I have lived alone with my mom since my sister went to college a few years back. I never knew my dad, all my memories of him were from pictures or what I was told about him. I really didn't mind, my sister was my whole world before she left for college. Recently, I have had problems with boys. No guy wanted to date me for a week at the most. The guys just wanted to get intimate with me and ditch me. At first, I thought I was the one ditching them. But now I realized I was the one being played. I couldn't take this anymore. I demanded a change, and I am trying to fix things at all costs. Things shouldn't continue like this. This is my story. This is how it began. I was the hottest girl in school. I dated as many guys as I wanted. Or should I say the guys dated me long enough as they wanted. I thought it was all about me until I realized. I wanted to make my sister's version of high school for myself. My sister, Brielle, was my best friend. She was only because she filled my head with how he dated a guy and ditched him. How another became a crybaby because of her. How Vic knelt down in the dome just to go watch a movie with her. And some other cool stuff. Don't be deceived, Brielle is way better than me. My mum said she took after our aunt, who lives in Dallas. I am just my mum's daughter. Even though I possess more prominent curves, both hind and rear, Brielle is still a babe to behold. I would have taken all her stories to be myths, but they were evident. Most of the time, when Mum was off to the office, Brielle came home with different guys. And she didn't repeat one twice. Never except for Drew. I could tell the reason myself, that guy was huge and muscular. Maybe he hit the gym regularly because the packs on his abdomen are well packed. Drew is the kind of guy every woman fantasizes about. Right from grade 8. I had been planning myself to achieve more than Brielle. She was my role model. But I wanted to reset the pace. It went well, just as I had planned. And I can tell I learned from the best. Brielle was damn good. I started with Stuart. Stuart was just the kind of guy you can call the victim of everyone. Straightforward to prey on. That day was my day to be a predator. And lo, the perfect target had started eyeing me. It was easy for me to find out this boy would die to find his way into me. I noticed this. Yet I was playing hard to get. I did winkle at him whenever I caught him staring. But he was one of those boys who really needed a motivational speaker to kill a cockroach. He was my perfect victim. And I was waiting like a cat at the end of the hole to devour the rat. We were at Hudson's party that night. Hudson wasn't really celebrating anything. In fact, no one knew his birthday because he throws a party every Friday. All Hudson needs to throw a party is his parents absent from home. I was trying to get a cocktail glass when I caught Stuart sitting on the sofa behind me. He was busy gazing at my behind while his friends were doing the talking. I don't think Stuart was really interested in the discussion. He saw himself in me. Who won't want to get their hands on those vast backsides? You can't blame the innocent boy. Who doesn't know the kind of problem he was about to get into? I winkled at him as I usually do. And I was moving from the living room towards the direction of the rooms. I looked back to see if he would follow. But he was resting his back on the sofa and his friend saying things to his head this time. He got up and walked in my direction. Finally, he had been motivated. He followed me and took all the corners I took. He bumped onto me, he said sorry and started shaking in his voice. I placed my hand on his head to calm his nerve. I know you like me, I whispered to his ear. I put his hands on my chest. He couldn't believe what was happening. I squeezed his hand on my chest. He looked at my face in astonishment. I bit the corner of my lips. His hands were vibrating on my chest. I opened the door and dragged him in while I gave him the kiss of his life. I could depict that he was a novice. But I played along nicely. That was what I had been doing since. Acting. I lay on the bed and encouraged him to come over to me. Before we started the scene, the lucky man got lucky earlier than expected. I smiled, I wasn't really interested in him. I was just teasing him. And the little guy fell for the awaiting bait. Before noticing my smile, I pushed him off me and gave him a straight face, making him uncomfortable. He pleaded for the release earlier. I could tell the guy was disappointed, but who cares? Right. I found my way out of the room and smashed the door behind me, proving that I was really angry with him. He jumped after me and pulled my hand from behind. And apologized. I didn't consider his apology a bit. Give me another chance, please. This time you won't be disappointed, he pleaded. Yes, he fell for the next trap. I said to myself. Okay, no problem. I snapped. I dragged him to the dance floor downstairs. I purposely stayed in the middle of the stage to call for attention, which I got. I placed Stuart's hands on my buttocks and added pressure on the hand so that he could squeeze those cheeks. Stuart raised up his head, feeling he was on top of the world. After a while, I perceived his hand vibrating on my buttock. I turned around, positioned my buttock between his two legs, and placed his hand over my chest. We danced to the loud music. I increased the intensity by stroking up and down on his laps with my backside. Within a few minutes, and can feel his wet pant on my mini skirt. I turned around at once. "What is the meaning of this?" I said aggressively. Everyone looked at us and quickly found out what had happened. Everyone started laughing at Stuart. He was ashamed of himself and ran out of the party, trying not to cry. I had a bizarre smile on my face. "One down, many more to go," I said to myself. I watched him leave and continued dancing. I got the attention I needed that night. I knew I had laid the first brick. And now it would be easier for me to catch more fish in my cunning net. I didn't tell my sister on the phone about the news. I wanted to be perfect before proclaiming myself. On my checklist of naughtiness, the next and most preferential thing to do is change my friends. I needed to start walking with the most incredible, hottest, and sweetest girls in school. I was not a fan of doing things gradually. I wanted to move with the speed of a power horse. Had I known, I would have taken the stairs instead of the elevator. The second day at school, I was a different Stacy. My friends couldn't understand, so they left me alone with my madness. I caught the attention of everyone, even Mr. Collins, the history teacher, who won't fall for the girl that purposely walked within the school premises like Lady Gaga with the shape of Angelina Jolie and the face of Nicki Minaj. The focus of the school just changed from outstanding academic records to having an intimidating moment with me. "Hello, girlie," a voice standing next to my desk said. I knew that voice was Britney's, the head of the Beatles, a group that had been terrorizing the school with their stony beauty. "Hi, Britney," I said with the sweetest voice possible. I raised my head to look at her face. She handed me a sheet of paper and left. That's normal, what else did I know Britney for? She's rude. I opened the article to read what was written. Atlas Corner. Cinema stall room, 4 p.m., don't be late, love from Britney, was written jaggedly on the piece of paper. I grinned a little. Yes, I said to myself. Mission accomplished. I could not concentrate any more in class. I was eager to meet my new friend. The Beatles. I get on rationalizing how the crew will start doing things with me involved. The numbers of boys that will ask me out in a day. The guys I will pretend I am interested in just to embarrass them. And so many other naughty and rude kinds of stuff finding their feet in my mind. I tried getting them away from my mind, but they remained stocked. Since I could not help it, I kept on enjoying the fantasy. Immediately I heard the bell. I took my things, trying hard not to rush since that was my usual self. I got my bag, this time. I had a handbag instead of the typical Scotch bag. I headed straight to the cinema stall room behind the theater. I followed Britney's direction by heart. I got to the meeting point. I never knew that place could be that dark and dusty. I saw the light at the end of the little passage. I walked through different artistries to the light. And I tried not to drop anything, which would have been a mess. I got to where I saw the ray. Behold, Lucy and Pinky. Those two were a pain in the ass, so annoying and disrespectful. I checked my wristwatch. It was 3:52 p.m. Wow. I didn't get late to my induction party. I whispered to myself. Hello, ladies, I greeted the two girls. They did not respond nor show any gesture. It was as if I was not there. The two girls glued their faces on their phones and kept laughing and talking. Those two are good at keeping each other's company. Since I had been ideally ignored, I got myself a wooden box and made myself comfortable. Pinky looked at me as if she would say something impish, but instead continued with her gist. I brought out my phone and started checking my emails. That wasn't necessary because I wanted to while away the time while I longed for the arrival of Britney. Finally, Brittany showed up. I checked my time to know the exact time. It was 4 p.m. on the dot. God, the girl is punctual. At last, she got that virtue. She wasn't all bad anyway. Before I could stand to greet her, the two older girls surrounded her and took a few shots with their phones. After the supposed greeting, she introduced me to the group. That was really unnecessary since we were all classmates. But I played along with it anyways. "Will you like to be a Beatle?" Brittany asked. I was shocked with nothing to say. But inside I was euphonious. I tried to be the tough girl they thought I was. "You're wasting time asking me. I'm here already." Brittany smiled beautifully. "I like this girl," she said while pointing her index finger towards me. Straight away, the two other girls started talking to me. They told me unique pieces of stuff. I wasn't intrigued, nor was I surprised by their sudden change of attitude. It was acting. And I know for sure that I just got enrolled into the school of acting. The girls helped me with all my social media accounts. Posted my picture everywhere. I took a couple of photos later uploaded. And boom, my followers started increasing. I couldn't believe that. It was as if the followers had been waiting for that moment to come to their whole life. I was introduced to some rules on how to operate flawlessly in the group. The regulations, in summary: be rude and naughty. Isn't that why I took the appointment? Life just got more straightforward, or rather terrible. Only time will tell. Everything was going according to plan. I now walked with the most popular group in school. And dated some big boys. The one for me was that I became the most sought after in school just a few weeks after joining the Beatles. Lucy and Pinky were getting jealous, but couldn't do much since Brittany was okay with it. I knew but didn't care. For me, I am yet to achieve my goal. No one had knelt down for me yet. Within a month after my induction, I started going out with Frank. Frank was from a wealthy family. I never knew his old man, but I heard the man is the chief executive officer of a tech company. Well, without doubt. I believe because Frank did brag about his father's achievement. All he had of himself were gargets and more gargets. The relationship was so dull. The guy was just too direct. All he thinks of is what lies under my panties. Such a naughty dude. I managed to play along with the supposed relationship. Frank had so much luxury stuff and went out with rich kids like him. He was fond of me. He showed me off to his friends every time as if I was a priceless antique to be auctioned. Though he was proud, this dude knows how to spoil a lady. I made sure my mum didn't know about my relationship with Frank. She wouldn't have supported the union. Frankly speaking, what kind of single mum will help such? Her ignorant is the best for me. I had more mischievous plans to pull. Frank had a party with his wealthy friends and decided to take me along one of those days. I saw this as a significant opportunity to pull the ditching string. I told my mum that I would be sleeping over in my friend's place. She agreed. I took off one of my beautiful dresses and a heel to match, and off I went. I stopped at Brittany's place to change into the gown. I called Frank and told him to come and pick me at Brittany's home. A few hours had gone, and finally, the lover boy showed up. I exchanged kisses and told him that Brittany would love to tag along with us. I made that up because I knew what Brittany was capable of. "No problem," he said. While Brittany was getting changed, Frank and I were in the living room sharing a romantic moment. Brittany came down from her room. She caught us in the moment, she coughed, and the two of us detached in a hurry. Frank led us to a black limo waiting outside Brittany's house. Inside the limo, Frank was actually a pompous host. I didn't mind because he is notorious for that. Brittany, on the other hand, was just present physically. Since Frank handed her a glass of champagne, she had been with her phone. Sometimes it looks like that is her real world. And here it is, virtual. Frank and I tried to make chemistry. But it wasn't perfect since the two of us had a different reason for dating each other. And love is omitted. I was dating him because he is rich and famous. And I needed such a feat to prove myself in this new game I play. Frank was dating me because he just wanted to show his friends that he could catch big fish. The limo stopped at the entrance of a 5-star hotel. The driver opened the door with Brittany stepping out first. Then Frank, who helped me by taking my hands. It was like a fairy tale. So, many reporters were present. There were camera flashes everywhere. Brittany was eager to face the crowd to earn more popularity while Frank waved at them. But I was able to hide my face perfectly. My mum mustn't see such things. It was a grand entry, to be candid. I met several children of vibrant personnel in the state. Every person was VIP. The first time I enjoyed such a feat. Everything was going on smoothly. Brittany had succeeded in entangling herself with another boy. She disappeared with the new guy. I guessed someone went to get dirty. I couldn't do much. I purposely made sure Brittany was here so that I could pull a perfect trick. But now she's nowhere to be found. Actually, I enjoyed myself. It was an elaborate get-together. I got everything I never tasted by just demanding. The party was going on fine while I was looking for an opportunity to create a scene. Finally, Brittany was back in the room. And Frank was busy chatting with his friends about their most expensive possession. How is that a discussion? I really didn't fit in too much. But Brittany fitted in perfectly. The girl is Tiffany in the making. Such a good actress, I must oblige. The moment had finally come. I saw a glass of red wine with Frank. He was about to turn back when I rushed towards him, making him spill the wine on the silver-white dress I wore. "What have you done?" I retorted. It was a perfect first attack. He tried to draw me away from his friends and pleaded with me for the spillage. I pushed him back. "You ruined my dress," I shouted at him. Still trying to avoid the disgraceful moment. He wanted to draw me from the crowd. I slapped him. Where did that boldness come from? I couldn't believe I could do that. I was terrified within me, but yet every bit of my plan was coming to play in the perfect order. Just the way I wanted it. Brittany, doing what she knew how to do best, had started live streaming. Then the rich man's kid apologized. "I am very sorry, I didn't mean to spill the wine on your dress. You should understand that it was an accident." "Accident? I ruined my dress. And you said it was an accident," I barked. The rich kid went down on his knees and apologized. I got a glass of wine and poured the content on him. I regretted the action immediately. But the awesomeness on Brittany's face comforted me. Brittany and I left the party to her place. She praised me as if I had just conquered a gladiator. I wasn't pleased with myself. Who does that? Brittany was full of my praise. Before I saw the video myself, she had uploaded it. I later found out when browsing with her personal computer later that night. To my surprise, so many people had shared it. I got to school. I looked around for Frank, though I wasn't planning to apologize. I just wanted to see him for no reason whatsoever. I could not find him anywhere. I couldn't send a call through. Hudson later blew the news. He had left the city for another country. At that moment, I knew that it was a game over. Times passed, then came Brad. Brad was a transfer student from another city. This boy was the kind of boy Mama would be proud of. He looked older than his age. But after some research, the rest of the Beatles and I found out he is just 17. No, this can't be the truth. The guy looked so mature. Within the first few weeks in school, several girls had fought because of him. The Beatles were also in incoherence on this case. That will be the first time as far as I could recall. Every hot babe demands a hot guy, I guess. For the first in forever, Lucy, Pinky, and Brittany fought and never reconciled. I was still a great associate to Brittany while Lucy and Pinky enjoyed each other company. I wasn't interested in this guy because of his insane popularity, but having him for myself will significantly benefit me. It would increase my charm by miles. Hello, babe, that was Brittany by my desk. Everyone now sees us as best pals. Brittany was not to be trusted. That babe was a big snitch. She told me she approached Brad how she felt about him and Brad turned down her approach. I want revenge, she said. Well, that's what I was good at. No problem, I replied. I knew I was irresistible. Every high school can't afford to lose me once they are opportune. I started walking towards Brad. I wanted him to notice me, but frankly, the guy was tough. Later he fell. One afternoon, we met at the Dome one afternoon. He bumped onto me accidentally. And my science project fell. He picked up the pieces and reassembled them as quickly as he could go. I was impressed. Can you have a cup of coffee with me? If you don't mind. I asked of him. I would rather have a bottle of beer with you at a bar. He responded. I smiled, I like this kind of guy. So, a date it is. I rejoined. We said our bye-byes. And the two of us went our separate ways. I chatted up Brittany immediately. She was amazed. And she drew her plan. It was a perfect plan and would make this big guy have a significant fall. Brittany is undoubtedly next to the devil in deeds. After the chat, I started having mixed feelings. I wasn't so sure, but it was like I was beginning to like this dude. Brad is handsome, and to my experience, he is far from how Brittany described him. And everyone knows is that when Brittany said it is raining outside, you need to go and check for yourself. I decided to take note of this guy to see for myself. On Friday, Brad and I finally met at a bar to take some beers. The bartender didn't bother to ask for our age, judging by Brad's enormous stature. We got ourselves an empty site and yacked away the whole time. The boy was amusing to be with. I got drunk, don't judge me. I don't drink. He got us a taxi and took me home. Most guys would have taken advantage of me that night. But he didn't. He dropped me at the door and introduced himself to my mum. I slept off on the couch. The following day was a weekend. I woke at noon. My mum gave me a spicy soup to drink. I took it. I was damn hungry. She set the table for lunch. And while we were taking the meal, most of the dining discussion was about Brad. It seemed my mum liked him. And so was I. For the first time, I can say I am really interested in someone. Later that day, I called my sister. We chatted a lot. She told me that Mum had told her about the whole thing. We both laughed about it. I said about the association between the Beatles and me and how we separated. She advised me to detach myself from such friendship. I knew she was right, and she was speaking from experience. But I had gone deep into these things. I didn't know how to call it short anymore. Brad and I started seeing each other frequently. You could tell something was going on between the two of us. But there had not been any official proposal. So, friends are the best you could call this kind of thing. And for a while, I had not been on talking terms with Brittany. We were not in disagreement, but just that we can't agree on a thing anymore. I started walking with my old friends. They had been waiting for me to get myself out of the madness I was in. You could tell that Brielle talked some sense into me. Brittany had noticed my lack of cooperation. And she had reconciled with the old Beatles members. Things just got worse for my companies and me. It was apparent that Brad only wanted to be a friend since his girlfriend regularly visited him from his previous school. I wasn't bothered, my friendship with him was worthwhile. Brittany tried to get to Brad, trying all her cunning moves. But I did give Brad a head start in the game. You could call me a snitch. It is fine, I am tired of seeing people get hurt. Most guys later found out that Brad and I were just friends. The long-awaiting suitors started coming up with their approaches. This time I was unnecessarily rude as I was. I realized I had been a bad bitch for so long, and many had been said about me. A lot of good people had been avoiding me, and I didn't notice. I was blindfolded by the things Brittany fed me with. My goal was to be popular and nothing more. I picked up so many lousy virtues on my way to fame. And my sister came out to be nicer than I taught. I was so much ashamed of the past few months. I received a few proposals and ignored the others. But none lasted for a month, with some lasting just a few days. I could get entangled with a guy today and tomorrow. He is no more interested in me. I was so much in need of a guy I could call my boyfriend. But to no avail. It was as if there was a famine of boys. No one lasted for at least a month. My hunt for a boyfriend increased. I refused to turn down people's approaches. But all ended within a short while. I told Brielle about this. She couldn't devise a means to solve the problem. I guessed she didn't know all too. I took up the courage to speak with Brad since we were good friends. I asked him what guys wanted in ladies. He couldn't give me a straight answer too. Even Stuart came knocking at the door again. This time, it looked like a payback. He ditched me before I even fell in love with him. What the hell is happening to me? It was as if the whole school planned to get back at me for my evil deeds. I needed a drastic change. I wanted things to go back to when I was that innocent beauty. I tried to redeem myself. Who am I to meet? Who is the head of these, or the whole school is just acting on this simultaneously? I could not figure out anything. I was confused. Who is behind all these? The Beatles and I had parted ways for a while now. We don't really exchange greetings. I really don't bother at first until recently. I had started thinking if they were involved in the dismay. This is what the group of girls is known for. And this is what they do best. They are better at tarnishing images than doing well in school. I started suspecting their moves and began to keep tags on them, hunting them with their own skills. After several weeks of monitoring their movements, I could not take them red-handed even though all accusing fingers pointed at them. I started checking on my friends after a failed attempt on the Beatle. They weren't shady, to be candid. But I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. Checking on them is really convenient since we are always together. But I can't predict their actions once they get home. I made it a habit to sleep periodically at their place. Even though they stayed up at night, it wasn't a reason to call the accused. After another futile effort, I thought of Brad. Can Brad stoop so low to that level? I don't know who to trust and who not to. I began another investigating job on him. I could tell the guy noticed my motive but did not care since he didn't find any reason for me to do that. For sure, he is not the one, but since he knows about what is going on, he is still a suspect but not prime. Brielle is the next on my list. She is miles away from home, but I can't afford to get her off the list. She called me more often than she did in the past. We shared more moments together and chatted a lot about our lives. Some about her school life and maybe fashion and some girls' talk. Things were smoother betwixt us. She had been my best friend in the past, but now I think she can make something up. But wait, why will she want to do me any harm? What will she gain from that? I am her little sister, and she is my whole world. Even if I tried to pop my nose in her matters, I could not do that well since she barely came home. She only comes on holiday. I don't know what to do and who to hold the victim. I don't like this period. I want to disappear from the surface of the earth before I become the laughingstock at school. Who can be involved in this evil act? Can it be the Beatles? My friends, Brad or Brielle? What do you think? Do you think? Do you think? Do you think?
My 17th birthday was just a few days away, and I needed a new pair of shoes to celebrate my birthday. I like ordering items online because they are cheaper. No week passes by that a delivery man wouldn't deliver some goods at my door. But I wanted to celebrate my birthday with a new shoe. I didn't want to celebrate my birthday in my old shoes. Even though most of the shoes I have, I don't usually wear them. On this fateful day, I was at home doing nothing, so I decided to order a shoe for my 17th birthday. I do not have a lot of friends, therefore, I am planning my birthday myself. I was sitting on the sofa when I heard a knock on my door. When I opened the door, I met a charming-looking young man who came to deliver my order. I couldn't take my eyes off him because of his charming looks. The delivery boy noticed that my eyes were fixated on him, so he didn't want to look at me directly in the eye. "Hi, I am Alyssa," I introduced myself to him. I was the one that ordered these pairs of shoes online. This time, the delivery boy raised his head and told me that he was aware that I ordered the pair of shoes. He said that was why he is at my door. He handed over the pair of shoes to me and turned back to take his leave. While he was walking towards his bike, I checked the shoe he delivered to me and I noticed that the shoe he brought was not mine. "Hey sir, please come back," I quickly called him. When the delivery boy returned to where I was standing, I told him that the shoe he brought was not mine. I told him that I was very sure because the pack looked too small, and I do not believe that my shoe can fit in a small pack like the one you gave to me. The delivery boy came back smiling and told me to wait. "Oh, it's another pack. The first pack I gave to you was for my mother, and she ordered a pen or something." The delivery boy collected the shoes he gave me the first time and gave me the original shoe I ordered. I was already having him in her dreams at that time. I was already looking forward to having him in her arms all day long. At this stage, I knew the only way I can have the delivery boy is by inviting him for a coffee. When he handed the shoes to me, I invited him for a coffee but he resisted. After much pressure, he obliged and entered my room. When the delivery boy entered my room, he decided to stand. I was not comfortable with the way he was standing, so I told him to sit on the sofa. When he sat, I sat close to him and started engaging him in a conversation. I quickly excused myself to get him water from the fridge. When I brought the water to him, we continued our conversation. I had already fallen in love with the delivery boy, so I wanted to know everything about him. I thought the best way to start a meaningful conversation with the delivery boy was to ask personal questions. I thought I would be able to persuade him through my speech. I wanted to ask her the first major question. I thought it will be better if I ask about his family first. I know before he answer all my questions, I would get what I wanted. "So, tell me about your family background." No sooner than the delivery boy start talking about his family than I excused myself again. This time I quickly went into her bedroom. I changed into a sexier outfit that would attract the delivery boy. When I came out of her bedroom, I noticed that the delivery boy could not stop looking at her cleavages. I started whispering in her mind. I knew I was getting closer to what I wanted. "So, I am all ears. Tell me about your family background." "I was born into an average family," he said. "My mother and my father do menial jobs to support me, my brothers, and my sisters. I have 2 brothers and a sister. My brother works in a post office as an accountant while my sister works as a hairstylist in a salon. I am the first child of my family, so it means I gave a lot of responsibilities to shoulder." Alyssa asked him when he started working as a delivery boy. He said I started working as a delivery boy immediately after I left high school. I left high school at the age of 18 and I am 24 years at the moment, which means I have been working as a delivery boy for the past 6 years. I asked him if he has any plans of going to college. For now, he said I still see myself as a delivery boy, but I am saving up to enroll in college in the next few years. I have always dreamt of becoming a computer engineer since I was a young boy. I would do everything humanly possible to achieve that goal. Oh, I also want to study computer engineering in college too. It seems that we have a lot of things in common. I just graduated from high school and I will want to try other things before I get enrolled in college. My love for the delivery boy continued to increase while I listened to his story. I didn't want the conversation to stop because we were already making eye contact. "I want to know about your hobbies." "My hobbies are traveling, watching football, reading, watching movies, and listening to music." My love for traveling was one of the reasons I took the delivery job 6 years ago. I wanted to flow with the conversation and I wanted the delivery boy to believe that we had a lot of things in common, so I told him I also love traveling, even though I am always indoors most of the time. I asked him the countries he has traveled to. To my surprise, the delivery boy said he has never traveled out of the United States. He said he has only traveled to some states in the United States like Florida, Texas, Alabama, and New York. The delivery boy asked me a question for the first time in the conversation. He asked about the countries I have traveled to. Pardon my manners, I pleaded. I said I didn't ask for his name since we started the conversation. He told me his name is Mike. He said he didn't ask for my name because he has already seen my name on the parcel he delivered to me. Now back to the question, I said. I told him I have traveled to the United Kingdom, Spain, France, and Canada. He asked me the reason I traveled to those countries I mentioned. I told him I visited those countries mostly on vacation. You said you like watching football. Which football team is your favorite? He said, although I live in the United States, my favorite football team is Barcelona Football Club. I support the Barcelona Football Club because of Lionel Messi. I do not watch football because I do not like it, Alyssa said. Even though I see a lot of women playing football nowadays, I still believe it is a men's game. Who knows, I might start supporting Barcelona Football Club because of you. I will be very happy if you do that. You will enjoy watching Barcelona Football Club because they play sexy and attractive football just like you. Did you just say I am sexy? Alyssa asked. Yes, you are, the delivery boy replied. At this moment, I knew I was on her way to getting what I wanted, but I wanted to take my time. I thought the best way of continuously getting closer to him is to continue the conversation we were having. So you said you like reading, can you tell me about the books you have read? I have read a lot of novels. I have lost count of the number of novels I have read. Although, the majority of the novels I have are romance novels. I just love romance novels. If I may ask, why do you like romance novels? Alyssa said. I like romance novels because I want to be romantic. I want to be a romantic boyfriend for my girlfriend. I don't want to be a boring boyfriend. That is interesting, Alyssa said. So, tell me the names of some of the novels you have read. I will like to have them too, I said. I also want to learn how to be romantic. If that is the case, I will help you bring a lot of romance novels that I have. Do not stress yourself by going to the bookshop, the delivery boy said. I got up and embraced the delivery boy. She said she was very happy with his kind gesture. After the hug, I returned to where I was sitting. This time, I moved closer to Mike again. You said you like movies too, so tell me the movies you have watched. I was more interested in this movie aspect because I am a lover of movies too. Most times when I am in my room, I am always watching movies. I like comedy movies, the delivery boy said. I love movies that make me laugh and take off the daily stress that I have passed through at work. So, tell me your type of movies too, the delivery boy asked. Alyssa said. I love romantic movies a lot, Alyssa replied. The same way you said you have lost count on the number of books you have read, is the same way I have lost count on the number of romantic movies I have watched, Alyssa told the delivery boy. I like romance movies because they are always lengthy. I like romantic movies too, Mike said. I do not watch them because they are very lengthy, and it takes a lot of time to watch. You know I am a very busy man, so it will be difficult for me to watch lengthy movies, Mike said. That is the reason I love short comic movies. I can watch them within a few hours, and they help me relax well as I said before. Alias said she will want Mike to follow her to the cinema very soon. Mike obliged and promised to follow her to the cinema when he is off duty. Alias couldn't contain her joy when Mike told her he will follow her to the cinema. She said she can't wait to go and have a nice time at the cinema with him. Now, let us talk about your music taste, Alyssa said. Tell me the types of songs you listen to and your favorite artists. I am a big fan of R&B songs. I like songs that are slow and have strong lyrical content. I was smiling after Mike's explanation. So tell me who your favorite artists are. I am a big fan of Chris Brown and R. Kelly, Mike said. I told Mike that I want us to play a game. I told him that I want to know if he is a big fan of the artists he mentioned. I told him that I want him to list 10 songs of the artists he mentioned as his favorite. Mike laughed and he started listing it. Mike said he will start with R. Kelly. Mike said some of R. Kelly's songs that he knows are I Believe I Can Fly, The Same Girl, It Seems That You Are Ready, I'm a Flirt, Down Low, Trapped in the Closet, If I Could Turn Back the Hands of Time, Fiesta, Sex Planet, I Wish, You Remind Me of Something and Half on a Baby. I was wowed as Mike continued to list R. Kelly songs. I am surprised, Alyssa said. But you have to list Chris Brown songs too for you to win the game. Mike nodded his head and kept smiling. Mike said some of Chris Brown's songs that he knows are Forever, Blow My Mind, Undecided, Don't Wake Me Up, Track Star, Run It, Take You Down, New Flame, Under the Influence, Loyal, No Guidance, and Go Crazy. You won. Now I agree that you are a big R&B fan and you are also a fan of Chris Brown and R. Kelly. Mike also returned the gesture. So, tell me your type of music and your favorite artist too, Mike said. I told him I love R&B songs too. Mike asked who my favorite artists are. I told him I like Celine Dion, Rihanna, and Beyoncé. Mike told me that I should also mention 10 songs of these artists. I mentioned. I said, so you want me to mention 10 songs because I asked you to mention 10 songs. I said, okay, I accept the challenge. I started with Celine Dion. I said some of Celine Dion's songs that she knows are My Heart Will Go On, I Surrender, It's All Coming Back to Me Now, All by Myself, The Power of Love, To Love You More, I'm Alive, Have You Ever Been in Love, Ashes, A New Day Has Come, Beauty and the Beast, and Just Walk Away. I told him that some of Rihanna's songs that she knows are Umbrella, Diamonds, We Found Love, Love on the Brain, The Monster, Don't Stop the Music, Only Girl, Desperado, Work, Rude Boy, Needed Me, Pour It Up, Towards the Sun, and Man Down. Lastly, I said some of Beyoncé's songs that I know are Say My Name, Crazy in Love, Countdown, Run the World, Irreplaceable, Love on Top, Formation, Brown Eyes, Naughty Girl, Beautiful Liar, Partition, and Dance for You. Mike clapped as Alyssa kept listing the songs. They both laughed and applauded each other. In a bid to continue the conversation, I asked Mike about the things he likes and the things he dislikes. He said he liked people that are honest, truthful, hardworking, and open-minded. He said he hates laziness, dishonesty, and lies. When he finished talking about his likes, he asked me about my likes and dislikes too. I said I like almost everything he said he likes and dislikes. I told Mike that I was not wrong the other time when I said that we have a lot of things in common. I said it's difficult to believe that we can have so much in common on meeting for the first time. Why did you say you hate dishonesty? Has anyone broken your heart before? He said he used to have a girlfriend when he was in high school. He said we were in the same class and he loved her very much. He said she started acting the other way when they left school. He said she started ignoring his calls, and she was caring as she was when they were in college. He said at that point, he knew someone else has snatched her from him. He said he had no other option than to break up with her. He said it was very painful because she was the first girl he would ever fall in love with. Oh, that said, Alyssa said. It's all right. Mike replied. So, did you date anyone else after she broke up with you? I asked Mike. Mike said he hasn't gone into a relationship since then. He said he has been focused on his work and his family. He said he doesn't want another distraction. So you mean women are a distraction? I said. Mike said some women are a distraction because they are not honest. He said they wouldn't love a man the way he loves them. He said there are also many other reasons why he has decided to stay away from having a relationship. Alyssa said she wants to know the reasons. Mike said he just wants to concentrate on his job and his family. He said he wants to be able to save up so that he can achieve his aim of becoming a computer engineer. Alyssa said, wow, that's fine. She asked Mike if he would consider going into a relationship if he finds someone that is honest. Mike said it's a probability. Tell me about your love life too, Mike asked me. I have never been into a relationship deeply like you. I had a very close friend in high school that people used to think we were dating. We were very close but we were not in any relationship. At that point, I knew had Mike where I wanted him. I knew I could do anything I wanted with him, but I wanted to take her time and see where the conversation will lead to. So, how have you been coping since you broke up with your girlfriend? Mike said I have been coping well. Mike understood what I meant by the question. He knew I wanted to ask if he has been having sex since he left his girlfriend, but he decided to play along. He wanted me to say it directly. I know he has been coping well. But, how has he been coping with lack of sex, or does he have a sex partner? Mike smiled. He was happy because he heard what he wanted to hear from me. Mike said he doesn't have a sex partner. He said he has been able to stay away from sex since he and his girlfriend broke up. I smiled and told Mike that I admire his courage. I said it's not easy to stay away from sex that long, especially having sex before. Mike also wanted to know about my sex life. Tell me if you have ever had sex before. Mike said since I said she hasn't had a deep relationship, he was curious to know if I have gotten down with someone. I said I have gotten down many times with my high school friend even though we weren't dating. I excused myself to get a drink for Mike. At that stage, both Mike and I were already in the mood to get down with each other. When I got up, Mike couldn't take his eyes off me as I walked to the kitchen. I realized that Mike's eyes were fixated on me, so I started walking seductively to draw Mike's attention. When I entered the kitchen, Mike thought to himself that that was the perfect opportunity. He needed to have sex with me. I picked a drink from the fridge and went to the kitchen to pick a cup. While I was walking to the kitchen, Mark stood up and trailed me. He stood at my back, but I did not know because I was pouring iced teas into a cup. While I was pouring iced tea into the cup, I felt Mike near me grabbing my butt. I knew it was Mike because we were the only ones in the house. I deliberately acted like I didn't know someone was at my back grabbing my butt. I was already in the mood, and I was enjoying what Mike was doing. Mike continued grabbing my butt. He was waiting for me to turn to him so that he could plant a kiss on my mouth. Immediately I turned back to see who was at my back. Mike planted a kiss on my mouth and smiled at me. At that stage, Mike and I were deep into each other. I pecked him many times in the kitchen, and he pecked me too. We continued to peck each other because we wanted to keep things simple. I led Mike back to my room and we continued our conversation. My conversation with Mike became more intimate. I was wrapped up in his arms while I continued to chat with him about his private life. Mike wouldn't talk for 2 minutes without giving a peck, and I was always ready to receive his peck. After about 3 hours of chatting and pecking, Mike told me he was leaving. He said his family would be waiting for him. I followed him to my gate and we kissed for the last time. It was an awesome experience for me. Since then, I have ordered more than 6 items. Most of the items are items that I do not need. I kept on ordering these items with the hope that Mike will be the one to deliver them. 6 months after, I have not been able to see Mike. I want someone to help me look for him. One to help me look for him. One to help me look for.
Hi guys, I'm Tiffany. And I grew up being called Daddy's Princess. But if ever a lie was detected real quick, this was it. If I'm Daddy's princess, then Daddy must be a king. And one thing for sure, kings have castles, but our home is far from being called one. For college dropouts who had to take on multiple jobs so we could at least have our plates half filled every morning and evening. They were doing bad, and although I had been deluded as a child by the mirage that I was an actual princess, reality soon caught up with me when I had to take on several chores at home from a very early age. Though we were content with what we had, we were far from comfortable. This is no life for a princess. This princess. Don't get it twisted. I am greatly loved by my parents, and even though they lack the elaborate means of saying so. This, however, hasn't stopped them from guarding me jealously from the prying eyes of the male folk. Princesses don't sell themselves short, Dad will always say as he cautioned me against getting too comfortable with the opposite sex. But I knew every princess is entitled to a Prince Charming. And so I just don't get why Dad won't let my prince find me. At least he'll rescue me from the jaws of poverty, and they'll have one less mouth to feed even though their belly will still not be filled. You could call me naive for taking the princess thing too far, but hey. I'm barely 16, and I fell quickly for the Cinderella story, so what do you expect? So back to where I was. A princess without a castle, crown, and cash. Bearing the name, possessing the beauty and personality of a princess, but lacking the purse of royalty. Having parents who never really graduated and are not digitally, globally, and technologically up to date can be quite challenging, to say the least. The never-ending display of ignorance towards the opportunities that abound in the digital world has become a norm at home. They never seem to understand how their daughter, who would be turning 16 in a few weeks, chooses to spend her limited pastime making digital arts on the computer, which piles up the electricity bill, which we always find hard to pay. Hell was almost let loose once when Mummy overheard me saying to myself that I'll be selling for $100. You would think a dam broke through her eyes as she cried while telling her husband that his daughter is now trying to venture into cybercrimes. Dad wasn't having any of it. We had watched together on a sunny Sunday as the cops invaded the house of our neighbor and arrested their son Pete. He was being charged for his involvement as a member of a cybercrime syndicate that had its tentacles spread all over the country, and was responsible for duping unsuspecting individuals of millions of dollars. Some victims were reported to have died from heart attacks, and a handful committed suicide due to depression. It was a shock, and you will need to understand the background of the person in question to grasp the surprise it came with. Pete was an 18-year-old who was the first child in a family made up of 6 comprising 4 children. His parents had decent jobs and did all to cater to the needs of him and his siblings. They were always properly dressed and behaved in a manner that endeared them to the hearts of the people in the neighborhood. Pete was a quiet and reserved young boy who always looked after his siblings in a manner that soon made those who were acquainted with the family address him as Deputy Dad. His light wasn't just shining at home. It shone in school, and within the neighborhood only brighter. He soon became the yardstick of excellence used by parents to determine where their children needed to improve. He was the pride of his parents. It was little wonder when you heard his father introduce himself as Mr. Parker, Pete's dad. Who would have thought that the statue of pride could quickly become an object of shame? The disgrace and embarrassment were so massive it quickly cast a shameful veil over past glories. Folks who had associated with the family in the past understandably started pulling back. Who would like to be labeled as a friend of criminals? Without wasting time, Dad grounded me without hearing me out. He was now more determined than ever to pay close attention to the few friends that I managed to keep. He wouldn't stand by and watch as I dragged the little integrity of the family's name to the mud. A good name is better than silver and gold, he fumed as he quoted the holy book. I didn't even have it in me to explain to them that I am into cryptocurrency. And it's not a criminal offense. Over the past weeks, I have been minting non-fungible tokens in their thousands and hoping it would sell. So that way I could raise a little money to buy my dress for prom, which coincided with my 16th birthday. A princess should at least get a birthday gift. And yay, that's no bad idea. I wasn't angry at my parents that night. I knew they acted out of love because they wouldn't want their daughter treading the wrong path. But I was sure disappointed because I was misunderstood. All I ever wanted to do was to try being independent for the good of all. I couldn't find where I had erred. I was only trying to do for myself what they couldn't do for me. What's the crime in that? As weeks turned into days and the prom drew nearer, everything in me knew I could make my fairy tale happy ending if I just had a dress, shoe, and a prince. If Cinderella could, then I can, or maybe try. And I already knew where to begin. Over time, I had lost interest in going to the prom that I didn't consider that of this year. But now I figured that some are born princesses while some are made princesses. And this was going to be a life-changing moment. One which I won't sit back and let slide like the other times. And even though I hadn't been asked out yet, it didn't matter much to me. After all, Cinderella got her date at the party. So I decided to talk to my parents about it because I had to buy a dress fit for a princess, and a shoe which must not be glass. If I'm going to get a prince, then I sure need to look like a princess. I had a difficult time finding my way to their room as my mind was already clouded with scenes of disapproval from the past replaying so clearly in my head. For reasons so obvious. I always stayed away from proms in the past because Mom and Dad couldn't afford a dress. There was always a bill long overdue, so getting me set for prom was a luxury they could only afford in my dreams. I had gotten used to the litany of poverty-decorated reasons why I had to sit each one out year after year that I finally stopped asking. But standing before their door, I just wished for a positive response for the first time in my life. I had barely announced my presence with a knock when I heard Mummy's voice from within making sounds whose emotions I couldn't tell. These sounds were quite different from the last time when Dad had just returned from a 3-month trip. A light taps to the slightly open door, and I found myself standing before my parents. They both looked all right, but being acquainted with it from birth, I could see it on their faces, I could smell it very strongly in the room, and I rightly knew just then that we were in serious debt. I just didn't know how bad. I had a lot of emotions running through me, and I was beginning to feel guilty for wanting to make a request. Any request made now would further ruin the atmosphere. How would I make my desire known without coming off as an ungrateful child who doesn't understand the level of sacrifices being made daily just to keep some air in my nose? Either way, I was here now, so I might as well just get on with it. I started by letting them know that I appreciate all that they have done, are doing, and will continue to do for me, but I simply wanted to be a part of the prom this year for the first time in my life, and I'll be needing a dress. I had nothing decent to wear for prom, as it had been a while they got me new clothes. This was the final chance I had to experience what a prom was like before I graduated. Time has never really moved so slow as Mummy looked intently at me with a smile that couldn't hide her teary eyes. Pulling me closer for a warm embrace, she burst into tears that broke me. While I tried to console her, I could hear Daddy's footsteps fading. He had always been the better one at concealing emotions. All the same, I knew he was hurt by the fact that he had not been able to give me the kind of life I desired. Not even for once. Pulling herself together, Mummy tells me the very thing I had known: we were neck deep in debt. Our rent had been 6 months overdue, and we had just been served an eviction notice for 3 weeks or face a forceful ejection. It hit me hard. I was so sure the walls were turning real fast. All this time I thought we were at the bottom of the barrel. I never knew we were under it. I woke up with a feeling worse than a hangover. It wasn't the first time I had to be denied, but it was the first time it caused a breakdown. If it were possible, I would tear the pages of last night out of the story of my life. It was clear my birthday this year was going to feature the usual: nothing. I could see that my teeny-tiny dreams of being swept out of poverty by a knight in shining armor and given the kind of life desired were nothing more than it was. A dream. The day I quit looking forward to finally arrived. Unlike Cinderella, I had no fairy godmother who could turn my wishes into reality, so I didn't bother making any. I was going to get busy just to keep my thoughts from drifting off to where I wouldn't be. It was prom day, and it was my birthday. But it will still end up like every other day. Chores, chores, chores. While getting off my bed and making my way to the kitchen for a glass of water, I discovered the lights in the sitting room were unusually on. This was about 3 a.m., and my parents would still be in bed at this time. I figured Daddy may have forgotten to put off the lights when he returned last night, and it was so unlike him. If anyone understood firsthand the need to cut costs by conserving resources, he was the one. He often got angry each time I left my desktop running, and all he needed was a little reason to take it away from me. Little wonder I was grounded from it without being heard. Anyways, it was all in the past, even though I was still hurting from not being able to access my digital arts. I took a detour, branching out to put off the lights when I was dazzled by the sights I saw. The sitting room was beautifully decorated with pink, a color fit for a princess, and ribbons were saying "Happy Birthday, Princess." I knew I wasn't dreaming, but I doubt I woke up in the very house where I slept. This wasn't here last night. Did Fairy Godmother visit us last while I slept? However, what happened didn't matter. I was just glad it happened. Looking round in utter amazement, I saw Daddy fast asleep on the couch, entangled with ribbons while holding a scissor. I could easily solve the puzzle. My dad had stayed up after I went to bed just to make sure I never knew what he was up to. He probably got tired and slept off. Well, I wasn't about to ruin my surprise, which for me doesn't come around very often, so I made my way back into my room. And although I was still thirsty, I had a feeling of satisfaction which I would not trade for a glass of water. As I lay on the bed, several thoughts just passed through me. On one hand, I was glad and grateful that my parents were going out of their way to make me feel special for the first time in a very long time, not minding the mess we were in. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but think I was the one who pressured them into doing so when I made my request a few days ago, or could it be that my parents amassed a fortune these past few days? Whatever the case was, I was just going to live the moment. It took almost forever for the day to break, but thank God it finally did. I could hear Mummy's brisk steps finding their way to my room and had to act as though I was fast asleep. I waited for her to call me the second time before turning around and letting off a lazy good morning that perfectly covered my excitement. She said some friends were coming over real quick, and I had to quickly tidy up the sitting room. She was good at feigning the part, but I was a better actress. I knew I had to pretend to be in the dark, so I hurriedly got up and made a dash for the sitting room while she followed behind. Opening the door, I dropped my jaw in a reprised surprise roll. I saw Daddy coming towards Mum and me as he joined her in shouting surprise. Now I must confess that though I saw it coming earlier and even acted surprised now, the joy was all too real to be fake. I couldn't help the tears that flowed down as I gave Daddy a warm embrace. I did feel like a princess. Daddy's princess. And if this was a dream, I won't want to wake up. While sitting down on the couch and savoring the love shown, my joy was almost short-lived as I remembered we had recently been served a notice. As though he could read my thoughts, Daddy said he knew we were neck-deep in debt. And things were not going great. Well, things have never really been great. Fashionable moving out of the area. And I may need to go and stay with my grandma, but they thought about what I said and knew it was only fair they reminded me of their love in a different way. He hardly finished speaking when Mum pointed at a box sparsely wrapped. I opened it, and in my hand was the most beautiful silver gown I had ever owned, and a shoe and tiara to match. One fit for a princess. I must have a fairy godmother somewhere because fantasy is turning into reality faster than I could ever imagine. I knew what it meant without having to hear them say it. I was going to the prom. Now I was a sure believer that dreams do come true. I had all that was needed to make my happy ending except a prince, but I wasn't bothered. He was going to be somewhere waiting for me at the prom and I'll be there. That was all that mattered. It was exactly 6:45 p.m. when my cab pulled over at the prom venue, which had already begun 45 minutes earlier on. And I was already breaking a sweat. It was the first time since my lifetime that I'll be going out for a party free from Daddy's protective eyes. Making an entrance was a harder step to take. Everything seemed to stop. Everyone seemed to be looking towards me. What have I done? I suddenly began wishing the ground would just open up at this point. I could feel them gazing intently at me. I was certain they were all surprised to see me outside the four walls of a classroom. Not dressed in a uniform, but decked in the attire best befitting a royalty. No sooner had I pondered on what to do did my friend Stephanie walk up to me with an expression that stated the obvious. "You look amazing," she said. Stephanie was from a wealthy family who lived the good life. Her dad was an engineer who owned a firm he established 25 years ago. And the mom happened to be the only grandchild of the only child to a late senator in the country who left behind a family business worth over $500 million. So they had no issues providing more than enough to keep her comfortable. As was the custom of the wealthy who had an empire, Stephanie was expected alongside her two junior brothers to take over the family business. And all her life from the day of birth was filled with activities that would ensure she was ready when the time came. However, she soon discovered that while growing up that she wanted little or no part in the family business. She had other interests, and only thought it fitting to build her legacy. But how was she going to let her parents know and accept her decision without stirring up their anger? She was caught up in the middle of pleasing her parents at her own expense. And this soon started affecting her performance in and out of class. It was when she heard the English teacher read a portion of my essay to the class that she picked interest in me. The words read, "We only function best when we become our true self." We bonded rather quickly, and she then opened up to me on what she was passing through. After pouring out her heart to me, I told her to do the same to her parents with hopes that they will eventually see reason, and thank God they did. Well, not after her mom put up a fight. Her dad has never been in support of enforcing life-changing choices on an individual. He believed people should be allowed to find their place in life, and given the liberty of choosing the path to get there. Mom thought otherwise. This was tradition, and she would not be the one to break it. She had the mindset that the whole children were expected to be actively involved in the family business. Her mom was, she followed suit, and Stephanie will be no different. The family was divided for days. Her mom saw herself as a failure who could not continue with the pattern. She could not understand why the husband who had approved of her actions over the years now suddenly decided to oppose her. She moved into another room and even quit having meals with the family. She tried playing the victim, but she wasn't. Stephanie was. Stephanie was already caught up in a dilemma created by her mom's ego. Would it be fair to her if she pleased her mom at the expense of her happiness? She, now feeling guilty, started reconsidering her stance. She could not bear to see her once united family broke up because of her happiness. But as soon as spoke to her dad about it, he refused and encouraged her to stand by her desire. He was no longer willing to sacrifice the happiness of his daughter just for the ego of his wife. He wasn't going to fall for her gimmicks. One thing he was so certain of was the fact that his wife of over 20 years loved him and the kids. And it was only a matter of time before she yielded. All it took was a call that Stephanie had suffered a breakdown and had to be rushed to the school infirmary. Then it dawned on her mom that she loved her daughter above her ego, and she would rather have a daughter who was alive and doing what she wanted than lose one because of ego. She wept in the infirmary as she asked her daughter for forgiveness and assured her of her support and love in any path she chooses to take in life. Within a few days, life returned to Stephanie, and she had me to thank for it. I had proven my faithfulness, and although the disparity in our background was much, she nonetheless remained a true friend who has never for once taunted me for my broken background. Earlier on, after the surprise party and the approval to attend this year's prom, I called to see if I could join her since I knew she'll most likely be driven there. But her response further reminded me of my mission tonight. She was going to be picked up by her date. She did promise to drop me off on her way home after the party. Dad had approved of my relationship with Stephanie because he had worked for her father once. And by his assessment, he was a good man. We made our way to a table where her date and his friends were. I felt uneasy sitting down there and listening to them chatter while enduring the uneasiness that came from the fixed gaze of Josh, the new boy in class. Josh is a 20-year-old rich kid who had recently moved over into our area. And for a 65 blonde with green eyes, he quickly found favor among ladies. Even Tiffany admired him from a distance. But I wasn't prepared to join the league of ladies who flocked around him because I knew he was trouble. A guy this hot is a playboy, and I had long resolved not to be anyone's plaything. Remember, a princess doesn't sell herself short, so there was no way he could feature on my list if I had one. Within minutes it was time to dance. Each couple to the dance floor. While I pretended to be distracted by those already dancing, I could see Josh from the corner of my eyes taking majestic strides towards me. Every hair stood on my body as I felt the goose pimple rise. Dear Lord, what do I do? I needed a prince. My prince. Not a playboy. I had barely begun planning to ponder my next line of action when I perceived the fragrance of his perfume. He stretched out his hands as his masculine baritone echoed the words, "Can I have this dance?" Everything in me knew I wanted to. And even though I said I wasn't tethered, he knew I was only playing hard to get because I had already gripped his hand. I finally felt stupid. My emotions had just betrayed me. I watched him grin softly as he pulled me up on my feet and guided me onto the dance floor where everyone else was already minding their business. It took him no time to figure out I didn't know my way around the dance floor, but he was no novice, so he simply guided me. With his arms wrapped around my waist and killer gazes shot from his eyes to mine, I found myself forgetting about the prince. The playboy was all my vision could capture. The princess and the playboy. I could swear I had my defenses set up, but I saw them come crashing down when he softly whispered in my ears, "You are beautiful." Once again my emotions betrayed me as I found myself blushing. I thought he was going to come for my lips. I badly wanted him to. He had me just where he wanted. He was Eda's and he knew it. This was not what I bargained for, but at this point, it felt like the best deal available, the playboy until the prince arrives. It didn't just feel right, it felt perfect. For a moment there it felt as if we were alone there. Just the two of us in my world, and it felt so complete. My moment of fantasy came to a halt when the music stopped. We had to return to our seats, but this time around Josh made me sit beside him. How he could get me to do things without an ounce of resistance on my part was very surprising. We got off talking and I could not help but admire his masculine features. He had an aura of confidence emanating from him which magnified everything hot thing about him, but though confident, he was not proud in any way. I saw a part of him I had never seen before, and it was clear I had misjudged him. He seemed to know what to say, how, and when to say it. I did ask a question that had disturbed me all along. And another person would have asked the same thing, because how a guy this hot could come to a prom without a date is a sight you don't usually see. Well, it turns out that he was stood up by his supposed date that night. And I was glad she did. But I had questions. What happens after tonight? What becomes of this conversation? Where does it lead us? The night finally drew to a close, and it was already evident I won't be joining Stephanie's ride. Josh had offered to take me home. A gentleman indeed. He pulled over just in front of my house as requested for my number, which I readily gave. The lights on the inside indicated my parents were still up. My mum opened the door before I could knock, and I saw the expression of concern on their faces. For some reason, Dad didn't ask about the handsome guy who dropped me off as the initial plan to join Stephanie back. I guess he was just glad I arrived safely after having a good time, although I knew that at some point I would have some explaining to do. It would not be tonight. Dad had made a promise that he would look out for the friends that I kept, and I was certain that he would fulfill it. Reminiscing over the good time with the good guy was what I wasn't going to do in a hurry. It suddenly dawned on me that I hadn't thought about my imaginary Prince Charming for over 3 hours. I wasn't the least bothered that I never met him. The Playboy had been filled up the void very well. On the second thought, I did meet my prince. Oh my gosh. It was Josh. I eagerly held my phone, anticipating a phone call or text. And it did come. As expected, I cherished and savored every letter, word, and sentence. He thanked me for standing in as his date tonight and hoped to get to know me better. He even mentioned his dad's housewarming party coming up in 3 months, and asked that I come around. Now my excitement and hope for a happy ending were going to be dashed in pieces. His invitation now brought the sad reality back to mind. We were moving out of the area in 3 weeks. As I lay nursing my wounds from a broken heart, I soon found myself becoming angry at everything. Why did I go to the prom? Why did my parents give in to my request? Why was this year not like the last? If I had stayed back, I would not have met Josh. And I won't be in this mess. Everything seemed to share a part of the blame, and even the fairy godmother was not exempted. At this point, I needed a distraction. Any distraction was welcome. But it seemed impossible, as everything seemed to remind me of my almost happy never after. I was going to lose something I barely had. Turning over to my desktop, I picked myself up, hoping to find momentary relief in form of distraction. And my crypto was the next best exciting thing after Josh. Along with the surprise earlier in the day, Dad had equally lifted the ban, and so I had nothing keeping me from my digital arts. Before long, I was in my digital space, and I just froze to my bones. How possible could this be? I've been getting surprises all day, but this beats it. One of my digital arts just auctioned for the crypto equivalent to $1 million. I could barely sleep. Once it was daybreak, I rushed back to confirm I wasn't dreaming. It was still there. $1 million. Thank you, fairy godmother. So sorry for the blame. I now started processing what had just taken place, and its implications. My dream was going to come through. We could buy the house and stay back in the area so that way I could be close to my prince, although I doubt I would still need money. Everything was set for a perfect ending. But there seemed to always be a small problem. Even when $1 million was available. How do I tell and convince my parents that I legitimately became a millionaire overnight? How do I get them to believe that they can sleep comfortably in a better house and not be on the lookout for cops? It seems that even with $1 million, I may not still be able to help my parents without reprogramming their mindset, and it wasn't going to be a walk in the park. Hey guys, I would love to know your thoughts on what decision you feel is best for me. What will you do if you were me?
I'm Stephanie. I live in La with my parents. They were everything to me until I met Jude, my new boyfriend. I love him so much, I don't want to get separated from him never and ever. I met Jude a few days after my parents and I moved to La because my father had just been transferred to lead a branch of the stockbroking company he works for in our old city of residence. At first, I didn't buy the idea because I would have to lose all my friends and, most importantly, my plans to get back at Truce, my first boyfriend. Truce was 3 years my senior, but our relationship was delicate. I felt safe whenever I was with him. He was an honest guy, classy and straightforward before everything changed. He was the head of the football team then, and I was just a girl on the cheerleading team. My parent knew about my relationship with Truce, and I don't think they were happy about it. My father didn't really act up, but my mom, let's just say she was acting like a typical mother who thinks her child isn't in safe hands, would do. I really appreciate their concerns, but I thought Truce wasn't that bad. Truce did visit my place from time to time, and he's always welcomed. Truce, who had no other objectives, don't waste time in the living room. We always head straight to my bedroom, you know. I was the lousy one. I screamed a lot and said so many naughty words. I think my parents heard but weren't bothered, while Truce, on the other hand, just remained cool. I did think I didn't satisfy him, but he never said that. What else can I ask for, you'll say? Moreover, my parents were busy individuals. That hasn't changed a bit anyways. They traveled on business trips a lot. I frequently followed Truce out to places or clubs. Most of them weren't so cool, but I didn't care. I felt safe with Truce. He was like my big brother. Though still against my parents' counsel, my association with Truce was perfect until that fateful night, one of the nights my parents went on their business trips as usual. Truce came to my place. As usual, he called on me, and as I was dressing up, he bumped in and met me not fully dressed. He took a long gaze at me from the head down. I noticed this, so I stopped dressing. I know I have a good shape. Assuming the mirror was lying to me, people say I took after my mom. She's hot. I've not gotten all those curves, and the 2 babies on my chest are not fully grown, but I had potentials. Truce kept admiring me. His mouth was gaping up. Elle could tell he wanted to have me, but I was teasing him. I hurried up with my dressing. I noticed he was hard, but he kept his cool. I smiled. To satisfy his lust, I kissed him passionately and whispered to his ear when we returned. We found our way to his motorcycle outside. It wasn't like those pretty bikes in Hollywood movies, but it rocks for a high school student to have his own bike. He started the cycle, and I jumped on it from behind. I held him by the waist as he zoomed off. We stopped in front of a club. This one was new. We had been to different clubs repeatedly, but not this one. I started getting uncomfortable. I looked at Truce's face, and he smiled back at me. I gulped in a handful of saliva purposefully to show my discomfort, but his emotion didn't really change. Then he came close to me as if he was going to hug me and whispered to my hearing something I never forgot: "This is where I really belong." Had I known, I would have taken to the heel, but I remained stubborn despite my instincts. Let's just assume I love being gullible, at least for that time or for the worse my whole life. My life is about to change for good on the positive part, but looking at that situation, things didn't go as planned. Well, I never had any plan, Truce plan at all. This was the day I will never forget. This was the day that changed my family's life. My father took that gig in La even though he was doing just fine here. My mom thought leaving was the best too, at least she would avoid shame, and it was depression for me on my side. I remembered vividly after that night, I said to myself, never will I date any guy until the end of high school. That didn't last much. Jude came into the picture earlier than the end of high school. Maybe I can't be trusted with my own words either. My emotion got the best of me, and I love it. Truce placed his hands around my neck as we walked towards the bouncer. I was a lot shorter than him, but I pretended to be cool with it. He started muttering some jokes that I found not funny anymore due to my current situation, but continued credulous. When we got to the bouncer, I became the stranger. It was as if he had known the bouncer longer than I knew my mom. There was great chemistry between the big guy and Truce. He allowed us in without asking for any ID. Funny, right? I know it is a culture for bouncers to ask for IDs, but this time was different. My mind flashed back to when we first met after a football game against the other best team in town, my then high school team's archenemy Oaks Christian. As the team's captain, Truce got injured early in the game. He could not proceed. He was stretched out of the playing zone, and since I was the youngest in the cheerleading team, I basically did not cheerlead at all. I was more like the errand girl in the group. I got the first aid box and walked reluctantly towards the team's captain. No one stopped me, not even the teachers. Everyone kept looking at the brave small girl walking towards the biggest boy in school. I have the skills since I was part of the Red Cross community in my junior school. I tended to his wound and made him very comfortable. Then I saw a smile on his face. I think he was satisfied with my services. He said, "I am Truce Dempsey, what is your name?" I can't believe my ears. Almost confused, I replied, "I am Stephanie Brown." Then he said, "Will you go have coffee with me tomorrow at the cafe?" Somebody hit me. The biggest boy in high school just asked me out. I carefully said, "Yes, I would love to have a cup of coffee." That was just 3 months ago from this fateful day. I thought I knew him, but that night I realized I didn't know him that much. I wanted to cry already. We entered the club. Almost everybody recognized Truce. I was surprised. How long has he been visiting this place? It was as if he was there the night before. He introduced me to everyone. The guys were top-notch, and the girls were so hot. Well, I'm the youngest, and I had potentials. The ladies are sexy to behold, and their curves are heaven. I felt like holding their 2 babies in my hands. I felt like an opposite gender by gazing at them. I noticed all the details they possessed. Before getting caught off guard, I quickly brought out my phone and started watching some videos. While I was busy with my phone, the ladies were whispering and laughing. I think they were talking about me, but who cares? I shrugged it off as I tried to find out what the boys were up to. Those guys were really planning something big or maybe crazy. Truce looked at my side from time to time and winkled at me at every instance. Everything there was kind of creepy. The noise was so loud like every other club. The bartenders were doing their job, but 10 people were in attendance. All are familiar individuals, with me being the only stranger. The guys are done with their presumed board meeting, and each guy went for their girls. Truce came to me and asked me what will I love to take. This wasn't the best moment to get drunk. I replied, "Water is fine." He looked at me in disappointment, but I didn't care at this moment. I repeated I would love cold water. He stood up, went straight to the bar and got himself a few beers, and got me 2 chilled bottles of water from the big freezer beside the bar. I sipped my water while every other person was marrying. The party moved from seriousness to naughtiness. The other girls are doing their thing before I could get my head around what is going on. A certain girl was really riding on a guy's lap so hard. Looking at his face, you can tell he will soon go. The girl was so good. Several hours had gone, a lot of adult scenes. All the guys present had wet themselves except Truce, who was on his 6th bottle of beer. Then, here came the moment they had been waiting for. I was here to be initiated as Truce's new girlfriend, and I knew nothing about it. Dave, Truce's closest pal in the clique and undeniably the gang leader, broke it to me. I would be stripped naked, and all the guys will take turns on me. I fired back at the idea, and they all laughed. Lucy, the sexiest, curviest, and most endowed of the other 4 girls, said, "It's the ritual only once, and you're welcome to the club, baby." I tried to fight my way out of the club. The ladies stripped me off my clothes, and the guys started dancing around me. I felt ashamed, and I cried. I was let out to go, and Truce made me go home all by myself that night. That night, I will never forget. I wept all night, my face swollen. Truce didn't call or check on me. Even without saying it, I knew it was over. The following day, I got dressed for school. On getting to the school environment, everyone's eyes were locked on me. There were whispers and disgusting faces everywhere. It was only me that was left to wonder what was going on. I got to my class, and the atmosphere was still the same. I sat on my chair, still thinking about what happened last night. Kathy and Elle, my 2 friends, came towards me. They told me about a video of me dancing naked with some unrecognized boys posted on the school website the previous night. What? It was filmed. I said that to myself, but it felt as if I was shouting out loud. No, I am doomed, I softly said to myself. They tried to ask me about what really happened, but I was too down to give a response. Stephanie Brown. That's the principal's voice from the school speaker. "You're wanted in my office now." I stood up from my seat. It looked like the whole world was upon my head. I wanted to melt down. I dragged my feet to the principal's office. My mom and dad were already in his office. He asked me what really happened. I was too ashamed to say anything. My dad couldn't look at my face, and my mom was sobbing silently. The principal asked me to go to the reception. A few minutes later, my parents came out and said to me, "You've been expelled, let's go home." I busted into tears. That was the quietest day in our home. My dad is naturally reticent, but my mom was gratuitously silent. I was in my room with my head deep in the soft pillow crying softly. A few hours later, my parents came in with 2 slices of bread, a plate of fried eggs, and a glass of juice. They sat beside me on the bed, and I could feel Mom rocking my leg. I sat down with my head bowed in shame. They comforted me before my dad revealed that he got a gig in LA and would take the chance. My mom went along with the plan. Deep in my thought, I was visualizing how I was going to get my revenge at Truce. I really don't want to leave, not now. My friends were the best. I didn't want to be separated from them, but I understood that decision was difficult for my parents. They took it because of me. I appreciated their effort. Everyone went along with the idea of leaving everything behind. Later in the evening, my friends came to our place. I updated them. They were initially reluctant. Soon they found out it was for the best. Everyone saw that as a good plan except me. I wanted to get revenge on my mess. They quickly jumped into helping me pack my stuff and assisted my parents in a few rounds. We resumed the journey very early the following day. None of our neighbors was out. I am sure my dad couldn't see the road clearly, but it was his braveness for me. We got to lie before none, moved into our new apartment, and everyone opened a new chapter in their lives. All this just because of my foolishness. My mom got me registered in a new school. The process was easy. I had good grades, and my viral video hadn't reached LA yet. That was a significant relief. I started attending class with the immediate effect of forgetting the past as soon as possible. I was a loner for the first few weeks because I didn't know who to trust anymore. Everyone tried associating themselves with the newbie, but I think I was getting better at avoiding people. That was my newest superpower. Then Abby came into the picture. She had been sitting behind me all semester, and I didn't even notice her. Wow, this girl is good. She talked to no one, and no one talked back to her. She is always reading a novel or writing something no one cared about except her. Her diary is filled with posters of aliens and spaceships. Weird, right? Help me pick my pen. It is between your legs. That voice was new. I never perceived that, and it was 3 months I resumed. I looked back. It was Abby. Babe, she's like an angel. Her lips were white, and the wet lips melted perfectly on them. I was still fantasizing about her when I heard, "Will you please help me with the pen?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I replied. "Here it is." She then raised her eyelid, trying to make me look back. Looking at me from the opposite direction was the class nerd, Jude. Jude is cute. He has a baby face and is the best student in class, but he is not sporty. This boy can't even ride a bicycle, nerd. Abby continued, "He has been looking at you since the professor introduced you to the class. I think he's into you." Why is Abby talking to me? This is strange. I would have been comfortable with this supposed discussion, but he'll be saying anything to me. She introduced me to a stalker. I took it as a setup, faced front, and gave Jude a weird face. Jude looked away with a smile on his face. It was as if his mission was accomplished. I finally noticed him. I felt unsafe and more comfortable. I rushed out to the restroom to calm myself a bit. I entered the classroom and couldn't wait for the bell. Immediately, I heard it. I carried my bag and disappeared from the premises. The following day at school, I got my stuff from my locker, and Jude came by trying to initiate some conversation. I didn't respond to his calls, though he sounded soft. I could pick he couldn't hurt a fly by nay, not him, not now and not anytime soon. Abby whispered to my ear in the class, "Give him a chance, you won't regret it this time, trust me." I looked back in awe. Did she know about it? Was she there? I felt unsecured. I understand how people that had been treated bitterly act, and I could tell you were once a victim, the soft voice continued whispering. I sighed with relief. At least she didn't know about it, I said to myself. What did you care? I whispered back. She smiled and replied, "Here he comes." I turned around and lo, Jude. "Hi, Abby," he greeted. "You good?" Abby responded. I think these two know themselves a lot. I later found out that they are twins, and my name is the leading topic in their house. Jude started with his speech. He wasn't even concentrating. My eyes were locked on his. "Can you hear me?" Jude asked sharply. "Yes," I responded in an apt. "Will you go watch a movie with me tomorrow night and maybe get a drink when returning?" "Is that a date?" I asked in return. "I guessed," he said with a tone of doubt. "Okay, this once," I replied. I couldn't believe I had just said that. That slip of tongue gave me the sweetest experience to date. After the movie night, we started going out. My parents knew about him, and they were happy that I had moved on. I couldn't believe myself, I was reborn. Jude brought me back to life. Unlike Truce, my parents were delighted with my relationship with Jude. God, this guy is well-cultured, a very respectful kid. His weird twin sister became my best and only friend in school. Babe, this girl can talk, only when she's not in the class. I found out she's the lousy type, and Jude is the timid one. That is the opposite in school. Their father works at NASA, that explained the alien and spaceship posters on Abby's diary. Their mom sells flowers in a plant store. Those two are really close, they shared everything without a tip of jealousy. They even shared my time among themselves. They made La my new home. My relationship with Jude was perfect, but we haven't gotten intimate yet. Jude said he could wait. And I really love this guy, but Truce's memory was well seated in my cerebrum. I could recall everything as if it was yesterday. Over a year now, my relationship with Jude Wilson was more pleasant than the early morning sun. I could believe what was happening, it was as if I was in a dreamland. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are the best. They treat me as one of their own. Brad was the naughty little brother, he is tough to please, I think we will get along. Brad is addicted to his video game. I deduce that it might be natural to him that the real life. Unlike my parents, the Wilsons are very predictable. Mrs. Wilson is always available, but Mr. Wilson barely comes home. Their stamina is kind of regular, everyone knows what to do with time. Everything with the Wilsons is routine, I like this home, and I fit in comfortably. Recently, my parents even allowed me to spend weeks with the Wilsons. It is a home away from home. The Wilsons are not as boring as they look, this person can party, they love traveling and even have movie nights every Friday. We are now in our finals, prom is in a few weeks. Jude seems to be very busy recently. He is the valedictorian, and as the school president, he is planning the best prom yet. Abby wasn't helping her twin brother. I wasn't surprised, she's good at ignoring people, and Jude was okay with it too. I really miss Jude. This is the first time in a long time Jude wasn't really available, but Abby was making up for his brother. I had plans too. My mom and I had been visiting wear stores and boutiques. As the first lady of the prom night, I ought to look my best. I didn't really know my mom was good at selecting dresses until now. All my life, she had been wearing office wears. Initially, I didn't trust her choice, but in time, babe, mom was good. She got me new pairs of heels. I appreciated her, and I gave her arguably the longest hug I have given her. She smiled in satisfaction. Tonight is the prom. Everything was going on fine with me, Jude, Abby, and my parents. Jude called me as usual. I understood he was trying to make up for his absence, but the information was different this time. He said he had provided an Uber for the night. That was thoughtful of him. I informed my dad about the news since he promised me the day before to transport me to the prom center. My dad was okay with it, and he wished me good luck. Braun. That was the doorbell. My mom got the door. Baby, it is Jude, she shouted. I came down the stairs. I was walking like an angel. I wasn't perfect with heels, but try not to rush myself. Jude was in his tuxedo, he looked up to take his queen. He was smiling, and I was smiling. My dad looked so pleased, and my mom joined her hands together, raised towards her chin. I am not getting married yet, I snapped at the duo. I met up with Jude at the end of the stairs. Jude whispered, I love you, beauty. I waved my hands at my parents as we walked towards the black SUV parked in front of the lawn. The driver was in a black suit. The driver turned, he was wearing a black sunglass. The face looked familiar, but how did I know a bearded young man? The driver removed his glasses, and lo, it was Truce. Truce. I can't believe myself. I ran into the house and straight to my room upstairs. What should I have done? My old boyfriend, who tarnished my image, is here to pick me on my prom night. Should I go in the Uber or stay home? What did you think? What did you think? What did you think?
Let's go back to late August 2017 when I, after not going on a date or actually even talking to a man for 9 months, decided to download Tinder and Bumble. Turns out it's all the same people on both apps. Same dis, different pics, am I right? I met a guy named Mike. We talked and drank beer at the since closed Green Lake Bar and Grill for 3 lovely hours, and afterward I walked him to his car. His car, because I suck at parallel parking, and in an effort to avoid having the patrons at my destination witness the embarrassing attempts and failures of properly operating a vehicle, I have been deemed fit to drive for over a decade. I find an empty street, ditch the car, and walk half a mile or more. Every time. Gotta get my steps. Do people still count those? I don't. Whatever. Anyway, we get to his car, and it's a wreck. Full of overflowing cardboard boxes and garbage in the back seat. The exterior paint is peeling and there are empty cigarette boxes strewn about, tobacco ash on every surface, spilling like slow lava flows from every crevice. Crooked butts peek out from under the seats like the stale McDonald's french fries of my grandmother's minivan throughout my childhood. I am half convinced that Mike has lived full time in this car at one point recently. Total dirtbag aesthetic. So naturally, I was swooning. We said goodbye and hugged briefly, politely. He didn't try to kiss me. A dirtbag, possibly homeless dude who isn't even into me. Hot damn. Yes, please. I was fantasizing about all kinds of dirty things during the tokenesque journey back to my car. It dawned on me very quickly that my chances of having sex in the near future had increased from 0% to whether or not Mike's car could survive the drive to my place if we were ever decide to hang out again. I looked up local mechanics and tow trucks, just in case. I made a special trip to Safeway the following day to purchase condoms. I found a shopping basket and headed toward the aisle where I assumed condoms were kept. My anxiety reminded me that I am not mentally or socially equipped to make a purchase of just condoms, even if I paid for it through self-checkout during the mid-afternoon lull I was strategically counting on. Discretion, modesty, and decades of sexual shame directed at women prompted me to first wander through the produce section. I actually needed bananas and grabbed a few cucumbers, carrots, and then tossed in a package of pre-made guacamole, a box of brown sugar Pop-Tarts, and a few things to reduce the phallic-shaped objects piling up in my basket to further conceal the condoms. Dating is hard. That's what she said. I grabbed a box of a dozen condoms feeling optimistic and proceeded to argue silently, as to not draw attention, with this register that scanned items were already placed in the bagging area. Why is this still a thing? Fix this. I got home and unpacked the reusable shopping bag, only to realize the condoms were not in the bag. I looked around the kitchen and the space near my door where I drop stuff and pile up shoes. Nothing. I checked the car next because what I lack in parking skills, I make up for in taking turns too fast when driving alone. Like I don't know if I want to live or die, and I need those little moments I'm not sure if the tires are going to stay on the ground. I feel a little lift or a slide and know, because I'm close to death, that I'm alive and like it. But the condoms were nowhere to be found. The receipt confirmed I paid for them. I was frustrated because I spent like $40 just to buy condoms and I didn't even get them home. If nothing else, I am a bee on a budget and I can't afford to go through that ordeal again. Reason told me to call the store. Reason is an a-hole. The call went like this. Thanks for calling Safeway. This is Timmy, or some other teenage-specific names adults never have. How can I help you? Yeah, hi, I just went through self-checkout and got home, and one of the items I purchased didn't make it home with me. Is there anything I could do? Oh, sure, I could check to see if you left it over there, he said, with the professional level of enthusiastic charm that is required for bullshit customer service calls. We usually keep stuff on the side when people forget things. What's the item? This is the part of the sitcom where Jack Morris pauses life at Bayside High School and speaks directly to the audience, telling them how I am about to heck everything up. Jim Halpert is making that face at the camera. Classic horror movie music starts playing at an ominously increasing volume that everyone but me and the fisherman from Jaws can hear. Boisterous women in movie theater audience are yelling, "Hang up the phone, you dumb bee!" This is real life, and I can't hear them. I imagine if I could, their cries would haunt me like Clarice and the Screaming Lambs. Plus, I am masochistic, or a moron, possibly both. Yeah, I say in my almost Bill Lumbergh tone. It was condoms? The pitch of my voice rose as I spoke the last word like a question, like I wasn't sure if I wanted to say it. I didn't. Timmy tried to put the call on hold before he started giggling. He was not successful. I am on hold. This is the part of the sitcom where Zach Morris pauses Bayside High. Jim and the shark from Jaws have teamed up and are both making that face through the office blinds. A woman screams, clapping between words, "Hang up the phone!" SpongeBob SquarePants comes to my defense, mocking their pleas for sanity, leaning forward, hands on their hips, eyes bulging. "Hang up the phone!" I don't. Timmy returned to the call after a long enough pause to tell every employee in the store that some girl is on the phone because she lost her condoms and doesn't have the self-respect/budget to just eat the $12 and move on with her life, and she is actually calling the store. He is pleased to finally have a funny story to tell the girl in his math class he has a crush on her for years. "Hi, I don't see any..." He hesitates like he's searching for the word on Ask Jeeves in 1998. The page eventually loads and he continues, "Condoms over there, but you could bring your receipt to the customer service desk and get another box." I regain control of my life. "Yeah, that's not gonna happen, thanks." I hung up. "Finally!" screams the frustrated, fictitious audience of my life. I then, like any sane and reasonable adult who isn't still jaded about Bezos' tax evasion, ordered a box of 36 condoms from Amazon for about the same price as the dozen at Safeway to be delivered, discreetly packaged to my door/leasing office within 1 to 2 business days. And I mean, I am still bitter about Bezos, but the annual Prime account fee already went through for the year, so to cancel now would be like giving him the money, so I might as well use it and cancel my membership before the next billing cycle. I tell myself for the 4th year in a row. I laid in bed cursing my alarm the following morning when I remembered my pre-made splurgy guacamole and jumped up to make avocado toast before my early morning class. Insert millennial joke here. Everyone laughs except the millennials rolling their eyes and drowning in student loan debt. I took the carton of eggs, bottle of Tapatio, and guacamole out of the fridge. There, on the middle shelf, hidden under the guacamole, sat a silver box containing a dozen Trojan Ultra Thins. I fought the urge to walk away from the kitchen and meet my stupid fate in the middle of the busy street. Police investigating my death would note the open refrigerator door and its unlikely contents, nodding in unison that this was the cause of my untimely but expected and understandable death. And honestly, this is the kind of thing that has happened before. Enough times that I should have checked the refrigerator before I checked the floor of my car. But again, I am a moron. Clearly in optimistic denial about the kind of person I really am. I spent the next 30 minutes scouring the internet trying to figure out if condoms are still effective after being refrigerated for 24 hours, and realized that I am the only person, out of like 8 billion of us, y'all, that has needed to know this information. And I still don't. There was a customer service phone number on the back of the box, but I heard the lamb screaming and threw the condoms away. I got slapped by my parents and they took away everything from me. So my parents caught me at my boyfriend's yesterday and they went ape shit crazy. Now, before I tell this story, keep in mind, I'm 21. Now on to the story. So before anybody asks, yes, I did live with my parents even though I'm 21. I wanted to save up enough money for me to be able to move out of the house and be able to live in a nice place. I was almost done paying off my car, which they took away now, so it was all pointless. So I was close to moving out. My relationship with my parents has always been rocky. We pretty much don't agree on anything because they are very, and I mean very, old school. They are also strict when it comes to me going out. They're strict to the point where I wasn't allowed to go out past 10 p.m. If I did, then I would get yelled at and they would take away the truck that I was working so hard to pay off. Again, keep in mind, I'm 21. Long story short, they're super strict and very old-fashioned, so I didn't like that, which is why I was planning on moving out soon after I was done paying my car, which was in 4 months. Well, yesterday, I skipped school. I know, super bad of me. To go to my boyfriend's so that he could help me look for a place. I had told my mom that I was in school because I didn't want her to know that I was actually looking at places and trying to figure out a way for me to move out sooner. So me and my boyfriend are sitting down in my truck when all of a sudden my dad opens my car door and slaps me across the face. Me and my boyfriend were so shocked to see my dad that we just stood there, which pissed my dad off more. And so he proceeded to slap me again and started to tell my boyfriend off. I couldn't figure out how the hell they knew I was at my boyfriend's till my mom told me that she was tracking my phone. Keep in mind, I'm 21. So I'm over here getting slapped across the face in shock, and my boyfriend is shocked as well. So we are just standing there while my parents are yelling at us. I finally woke up from my shock after a while, so I yelled at them to stop yelling like wild animals and to take me home. They did just that after they calmed down, but the walk to my parents' car was the most embarrassing thing ever because I felt like a 14-year-old getting picked up by her parents after she tried to sneak out. Again, keep in mind, I'm 21. I also felt even more embarrassed because pretty much all of his family witnesses me getting slapped by my parents. I just couldn't believe my parents had actually done that shit. Honestly, please someone answer me and tell me if this is normal. So we got home and they proceeded to tell me off and go off on me. And I just kept packing up my stuff because I just can't stay in this place after that shit happened. I mean, come on, I got slapped in public by my parents. To make matters worse though, they took away the truck that they sold to me. The truck that I worked hard for just because I want to move out and live my life on my own after what happened. Note, before any of you ask, I can't call the cops on my parents for taking away the truck because my dumbass trusted them when they told me that they would put the car under my name as soon as I was done paying it. In the meantime, the car is under their name, which is why I can't really take legal matters until I show proof that I paid for the truck, which I'm sure will not do much help. Or will it? I'm asking any lawyers out there who are reading this. So now I'm stuck in a situation where I want to move out, but I'm not sure if I should because my parents pretty much kept all of my money and I don't have a car to take me places anymore. Moral of the story is truly be careful of those who you trust because even your own family will sometimes do you dirty. Also make sure that your crazy parents aren't tracking you. Another thing I forgot to mention is that they took away my social security number and my green card, all because I didn't pay for them and I'm ungrateful. B, I was 8 when I got my green card. How the heck am I supposed to pay you? Tinder date turns into clingy and aggressive guy. Okay, true story. I had been dating a guy for several years, and after a number of tense and tough conversations regarding some issues we considered irreconcilable, we broke up. I was single for about 7 months, whole and healed. I understood why we broke up and believed that because of our mutual refusal to bend to the other person, it was for the best. I go on Tinder. I'm a busy gal, and I wanted some food and some wine and an orgasm or two. I made that pretty clear in messaging with several guys, and then the humor and personality of one guy made me agree to the date. It was fun, he had a great personality, and the conversation flowed relatively easy. I went back to his place, and we hung out for a while longer, and I ended up going home. Only dinner and wine that night. Then we agreed to meet up again, and I'm thinking about sex. I make that pretty clear. Not in a I'm gonna use you for sex way, but in a I'm on this app because I'm horny and I prefer a real penis to what I've been using for 7 months way. Still, no sex. And the second date, it got a little deeper. Not like, tell me about your familial drama and deepest fears, just who do you want to be? What do you want to do in life? I realize we are pretty far off on the spectrum of our goals, and I don't think you have to line up on goals, but at least drive or ambition. I'm thinking, he's nice, but I don't think I want this to go anywhere. So I tell him that. He says it's fine. He knows what Tinder is for, and he gets it. He thanks me for my honesty, y'all. Fast forward a week or so of texting, schedule's not lining up, still no sex. I'm talking to a few other guys on Tinder, and then my ex, after 7 months of running into each other for work-related stuff, We don't work together, but people we work with each of us. In the occasional text, he asked if I need any help moving. A mutual friend mentioned I'd asked for their help. He figured he would offer. Anyway, the ex can't make the move in a day, but comes the day after to help me mount my TV, set up my bed frame, and install a cat door. He was a little weird when he got there, but it was fine. And then, randomly, in the middle of us mounting the TV, he tells me that he's done a lot of thinking. He's talked to his closest friends and his dad about it. He's not big on asking for help, so that's quite the step. And he wants to know if I'm still single. He wants to take me on a date because he realized that some of the issues we broke up over either weren't issues anymore or weren't worth it if it meant he didn't get to have me in his life. Straight out of a damn rom-com this moment was. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm thinking, how is this real? People don't actually do this. You don't break up for 7 months and then get back together. I tell him I've been going on dates and there's a guy who I've been going out with specifically. It's nothing serious, but I don't feel good about just dropping him, and I don't feel good about just jumping back into a relationship we quit for good reasons. So I sent him on his way, after the rest of the installs were done, and I told him I'd think it over. I tell the Tinder guy as soon as we talk next. I'm not in the business of playing with hearts, and I don't want to feel like I'm cheating on someone, even though I'm technically dating no one. He says it's cool, he gets it. Then we do have sex. It's awful. He takes a medication that makes his parts not work all the way, and he was very porny about the whole encounter. In the let's trade positions every 2.5 seconds, and I'm gonna slap your ass hard without mentioning it, and choke you a little without mentioning it before. I faked an orgasm so it would be over, and then he said he couldn't get off without watching porn anyways. Okay, what a fun day. Tinder for the win. Several weeks go by, no sex, a few dates with each guy, lots of tough and intentional conversations with the ex. We come to an agreement. We decide a trial run of dating without sex for about a month and see if it could work. I tell Tinder guy, it's over, I'm going with the ex. He absolutely loses it. Sends me 20 texts in about as many seconds. Calls me several times and ends up telling me I'm not as strong as I think I am if I'm going back to him, as if he was an abusive asshole I fled from. Tells me I'm not even that attractive, that I'm weak-minded and pathetic. Continues texting me mean things, leaves me a very mean voicemail. Luckily, I had just moved and he only had my phone number. Probably stalked me on social media, but didn't have my old or new address. I ended up telling him that it had nothing to do with him, that I was sorry and it wasn't my intention, that we weren't even dating and there was someone out there for him, that we were better as familiar strangers. He really didn't like that and ended up telling me that he loved me and that I was the closest thing to it he'd ever met and that he would never move on. I've now been back with my ex for 8 months and we're doing great. Tinder guy has completely left me alone since the week he confessed his undying love to me, and I've moved on. I'll never date online again. I'll never recommend dating online to anyone. What a wild ride. I wish I made up that story because it caused more than a few tears and several scary nights as I lived alone at a time, and I didn't know how crazy Tinder guy really was. Maybe he'll kill my firstborn one day as retribution. Who knows? A date I will never forget. Honestly, I've never been a very open person. I've always been that super friendly and happy girl that seems like she has the perfect life, but no one really knows that deep. I think the only person who knows my entire story is my boyfriend, who is so great to me, and of course my little brother, who shared a lot of these experiences with me. There's a lot of things I have never had the courage to tell anyone, so here I am making my best effort. My parents got divorced when I was 5 years old and my younger brother was 2. This was really the beginning of everything falling apart for me. I know in this generation it's pretty common, but it was hard for a little girl who didn't understand why she had to go to mommy's 1 week and daddy's the next. I used to cry under my desk at recess and pray every night that they would get back together. My mom and I have never had a good relationship because of everything that has happened. She used to send me to school and daycare in shorts, no jacket, and sandals in the winter, not wanting my good clothes to go to my dad's. Keep in mind, I live in Canada. This is just one of the many things that led to the huge custody battle my mom started. My dad won and they settled on 50-50 custody, but my mom blamed a lot of it on me because I would email my dad telling him how much I missed him, and my mom took this as me taking his side. Of course, being so innocent, I always stuck up for her and thought everything was normal. My mom got remarried when I was 7. Her new husband was far from perfect. He supported us tangibly, but never emotionally. No matter how hard I tried, he was never proud of anything I did, and as a little girl, all I wanted was acceptance. He was also very aggressive, and we were terrified of him. My dad also had a girlfriend. She straight up neglected us. She had a child of her own who she barely had a relationship with. My dad worked night shifts as a refrigeration mechanic in order to support us, and she would lock herself in her room, refusing to talk to us when he was gone. I was around 7 or 8 years old when I started cooking dinner for my little brother and myself. I never told my dad because, again, I thought this was a normal thing. My dad was always telling me how he wishes my mom never gave up on him, and so he never gave up on his girlfriend, who he desperately believed could change for the better. Fast forward to 7th grade. I was 13 years old when my grandpa left my grandma and never told us. They had been married for about 30 years and he cheated on her. He moved out, never telling my brother and I, leaving us to think he was gone on a work trip and never came back. This was devastating, especially for me, because he was my best friend. My grandma became extremely depressed, having been with my grandpa since she was 16. We had to move in with her to help her take care of things, seeing as she had no idea how to do much. A few months later, my dad slipped and broke his ankle and then went to work and broke both arms. It was a year worth of surgeries and officially parenting my brother because my father physically couldn't. He had to quit his job because the nurse ended up being his ex-girlfriend who hated him, and there ended up being a malpractice which he didn't bother doing anything about. Being home all the time literally made him go insane. He developed so many mental health issues and ended up breaking up with his girlfriend. She was livid. She used to break into our house and we'd wake up to her doing dishes and stealing my clothes. No joke. One time we woke up to her in our shower, and when we tried to leave, she jumped on the hood of his car, butt naked. Fun times. She started hacking our phones and threatening my brother and I when my dad refused to give her his credit card information. Again, this affected his mental health and he started developing diagnosed schizophrenia and extreme paranoia, along with his previously diagnosed anxiety, depression. A date I will never forget. Honestly, I've never been a very open person. I've always been that super friendly and happy girl that seems like she has the perfect life, but no one really knows that deep. I think the only person who knows my entire story is my boyfriend, who is so great to me, and of course my little brother, who shared a lot of these experiences with me. There's a lot of things I have never had the courage to tell anyone, so here I am making my best effort. My parents got divorced when I was 5 years old and my younger brother was 2. This was really the beginning of everything falling apart for me. I know in this generation it's pretty common, but it was hard for a little girl who didn't understand why she had to go to mommy's one week and daddy's the next. I used to cry under my desk at recess and pray every night that they would get back together. My mom and I have never had a good relationship because of everything that has happened. She used to send me to school and daycare in shorts, no jacket, and sandals in the winter, not wanting my good clothes to go to my dad's. Keep in mind, I live in Canada. This is just one of the many things that led to the huge custody battle my mom started. My dad won and they settled on 50-50 custody, but my mom blamed a lot of it on me because I would email my dad telling him how much I missed him, and my mom took this as me taking his side. Of course, being so innocent, I always stuck up for her and thought everything was normal. My mom got remarried when I was 7. Her new husband was far from perfect. He supported us tangibly, but never emotionally. No matter how hard I tried, he was never proud of anything I did, and as a little girl, all I wanted was acceptance. He was also very aggressive, and we were terrified of him. My dad also had a girlfriend. She straight up neglected us. She had a child of her own who she barely had a relationship with. My dad worked night shifts as a refrigeration mechanic in order to support us, and she would lock herself in her room, refusing to talk to us when he was gone. I was around 7 or 8 years old when I started cooking dinner for my little brother and myself. I never told my dad because, again, I thought this was a normal thing. My dad was always telling me how he wishes my mom never gave up on him, and so he never gave up on his girlfriend, who he desperately believed could change for the better. Fast forward to 7th grade. I was 13 years old when my grandpa left my grandma and never told us. They had been married for about 30 years and he cheated on her. He moved out, never telling my brother and I, leaving us to think he was gone on a work trip and never came back. This was devastating, especially for me, because he was my best friend. My grandma became extremely depressed, having been with my grandpa since she was 16. We had to move in with her to help her take care of things, seeing as she had no idea how to do much. A few months later, my dad slipped and broke his ankle and then went to work and broke both arms. It was a year worth of surgeries and officially parenting my brother because my father physically couldn't. He had to quit his job because the nurse ended up being his ex-girlfriend who hated him, and there ended up being a malpractice which he didn't bother doing anything about. Being home all the time literally made him go insane. He developed so many mental health issues and ended up breaking up with his girlfriend. She was livid. She used to break into our house and we'd wake up to her doing dishes and stealing my clothes. No joke. One time we woke up to her in our shower, and when we tried to leave, she jumped on the hood of his car, butt naked. Fun times. She started hacking our phones and threatening my brother and I when my dad refused to give her his credit card information. Again, this affected his mental health and he started developing diagnosed schizophrenia and extreme paranoia, along with his previously diagnosed anxiety, depression, and ADHD. About a year later, he believed she was only threatening him with us because of him and thought hurting himself would save us. He tried to OD on his meds and ended up in the psych ward in the hospital. The doctors believe this did permanent damage to his brain. Of course, he was never the same after this. Because of the custody battle, I was always terrified my mom would take my brother and I away and we'd never see him again if she knew anything relatively imperfect about him. So I hid everything from her, and she never knew he was in the hospital. The entire year we stayed with my grandma on his days, and she'd drive us to the hospital to visit him. He tried so hard to spoil us and would make crafts for us to bring home every time we came to see him. This was so difficult for me because I had to go to bed every night without being able to say goodnight to him, and I had to go to my mom's the next day and lie about it. About a year and a half later, he could come home. This was a big change, and he had a new girlfriend by this time, who also ended up being crazy. Moving on about a year later, and he tried to hurt himself again, the day after my 15th birthday. This time, my brother and I were there. I remember him running up and down the stairs, angry, dazed, and refusing help. We called the police, and my brother and I hid upstairs under my bed in fear they would call Child Protective Services. Right below my room was the front door, and so we could easily hear everything. My dad refused to go with them, and they tased him to get him to cooperate. I remember his scream like it was yesterday. This was truly one of the hardest moments of my life. He ended up back in the hospital, and again, I had to lie. After 6 months, he was okay to come home. There were times where he asked me to sit in the closet until daylight because he swore someone would come hurt us. I was the only one he could talk to. My brother and grandma told him he was crazy, but I let him vent without fear of judgment. He was my best friend. He would come into my room and cry at 2 a.m., telling me how much he loved me and how sorry he was for putting me through so much. His happier days, he would come to my room and we'd bond over music. That was our thing, trying to impress each other with our new or old rap and R&B music we think we'd like. He supported every single thing I did, and as he could come to me without fear of judgment, I could do the same with him. He tried so hard. He was honestly the best dad I could have asked for. Yes, he put me through a lot, but I would do it over again if I could. November 10th, 2017. A date I will never forget. I was 17, turning 18 in 3 months to the day. I get to my dad's and my grandma is sitting with all my uncles on the couch. They all look devastated and I don't understand why. I put forms in my stomach and I start panicking, asking where my dad is. I start running around the house, hoping to find him sleeping in one of the rooms, to no avail. The words, "I'm so sorry, your dad passed away this morning," along with the crack in my grandma's voice and tears in her eyes that follows, burns in my memory. My brother instantly starts screaming and bawling in pain, but I try not to react to make sure he's okay. I can't help but to start screaming myself. I collapsed to the floor and began rocking back and forth. I remember sitting up and saying, "You're joking, right?" about 10 times, hoping it was just some cruel joke. After that night, I became numb to the feeling. I couldn't cry. I went to the funeral a few days later with a straight face. I was so hurt that I couldn't cry no matter how I felt. My best friend was gone, and it was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever been through. His crazy new girlfriend accused me of not caring when he passed because I wouldn't give her his stuff, and then didn't show up to the funeral, proving how much she really cared. On God, I almost fought her. I ended up telling my mom everything about his mental health, to which she started resenting me for hiding for so long. This pretty much ruined our relationship, which is the reason I moved out, and with my current boyfriend about 6 months ago. Side story, I had a different new boyfriend at the time who came to the funeral with me. A week later, I caught him cheating on me. I'm now 18, and it has been almost 2 years since he passed. I moved out of my mom's because of our relationship. I live with my boyfriend, who I met in April 2018. Thankfully, I had an amazing support group who helped me get back on my feet. I'm attending university in the fall, have started my own small business, and am working full-time. Instead of allowing my devastation to victimize me, I use them to motivate me. We all have rough patches, but I am confident that as long as you are motivated and persistent in succeeding, you can, through anything. How religion took 16 years from my life. It feels weird to do this, but I wanted to tell my story to people who might understand. I'm not professionally diagnosed, but I definitely have deep emotional and mental problems. Please don't tell me to seek out professional help. I want to have therapy so bad. I know that I need help, but for now, it's not possible. Because if I would ask my parents, they would tell me I should pray to God and He would fix the phase I have. But I assure you, as soon as I get the opportunity to seek out professional help, without my parents knowing I'm going to. As long as that is possible, I'm trying to figure out what is going on with me on my own. I did so much research during quarantine because I started to question my sense of self, especially my identity, and ended up having an internal crisis. I thought my issues weren't that deep because I never was physically abused and technically everything in my life was fine. I had clothes, food, and an overall loving family on the surface. And I played it down because I thought someone like me can't call their experiences trauma because I was never hit nor bullied. Generally, people like me, because I was a massive people pleaser and still do it, but it's gotten better. Or at least, they were nice to me. My parents supported me, helped me out when I needed money for something, and now there are two parts of me fighting. The one part that knows exactly how hecked up I really am, and the other part that tells me I'm exaggerating, that I should stop overthinking and stop being ungrateful. I'm torn, and I hope to find at least one person who kind of understands me. I feel like no one could ever get me, because my trauma doesn't feel validated. Even though I found out that the part of the brain that is responsible for physical pain is also responsible for emotional pain. It still feels like I don't deserve to be heard, because on the surface, everything was perfectly fine, and even though I talked to friends about it and they really helped me, they still told me to be grateful that I was well liked and no one directly hurt me. But I can't. I can't look at the positive aspects and live normally. It affects my life. It affects the person I am. It shaped me. I can't concentrate, and it got worse and worse with time. I have emotional outbursts that I learned to hide. I'm constantly on guard and don't feel safe in my house because I constantly think my parents could find out something that I'm hiding from them. I can never relax no matter where I am, except when I'm at my boyfriend's house and I know no one is going to be at home for a longer period of time. I feel like I'm not worth it. I feel ugly on the inside and outside, and I hate myself for coping by overeating. I'm not obese nor anything near it, but if I continue to eat how I eat without going to the gym, it could happen. I feel like I don't have to be the main mother figure to my sisters because my mom is so emotionally detached that I don't want them to think that what she does is real love. But the worst thing is how distant I feel from my emotions and myself. Does a myself even exist? Can I ever be it? I feel numbed out and drained, even though I do nothing all day but distract myself as good as I can. I feel like I never achieved anything and that I never will. Everything is so overwhelming and so hard to do, even the littlest homework or task. That's why I have a pile of work in my emails, and in the back of my mind that stresses me the hell out. But I just can't get myself to do it unless it has a deadline. And even then, I tend to it last minute. I feel weak, stupid, and misunderstood, and I think to myself, if that continues, all my good marks are going to drop, and then my parents are going to be a problem even on the surface. I'm doing my A-levels, class of 2021, in Germany. I was born here. Right now, and I just feel like I can't do it, and it is required from me that I get a prestigious degree, even though I would rather pursue a singing career. That was the longest introduction I ever wrote, but it needed to be at least written down somewhere. So what is the big deal? What am I complaining about? I'll try to create a chronological order and to remember everything crucial, but I yesterday realized that I'm missing blocks of time in my memories, even from recent times. It all started before I was born. My parents found each other through friends and got together. My mom lived in Kazakhstan before moving to Germany. I still don't exactly know why. And my father lived in Siberia before moving to Germany. His and my uncle's parents wanted to prevent them from having to fight in a war zone. And so they happened to live in the same city and they met. They got together and married. Then their neighbors invited them to go with them to a Russian-German evangelical church, and they ended up being members. Then I was born and everything was perfect. I was in church every Sunday from the moment my mother could leave the hospital. I never knew anything different. And as soon as I was able to be separated from my mother for 2 to 3 hours, I was with other children my age while the adults were attending the big service. And then the indoctrination started. I don't remember much from my time in church, or the cult as I call it now, from the time before I was 12. I only remember my time in school, which is very odd to me, but what do I know? I just remember being a people pleaser from the start and everything they taught us, but there aren't many clear memories. I was good at being a people pleaser. Now it's easy for me to approach people and connect on a surface level, but at what price? It's scary to me that my memories are so blurry. I don't even know who I was friends with or if I even had friends before the age of 10. I just remember that I wanted to be perfect in God's eyes. I wanted to be the perfect example of a girl who loves Jesus with all her heart. I wanted people in church to look at me and think I will make it far in my faith. And I achieved that, I think. But now I hate my past self for caring so much. So what were we taught there? God created the world, Jesus died for my sins and resurrected after 3 days. The Bible is the only truth and the only way I must live. Everything else is the devil's work. And even though they didn't say it in particular, but that our church is the only one to teach the real truth, and that every other church doesn't have God in it and immediately leads to hell and damnation. We were taught that the secular world was highly dangerous, and as soon as we were not following one of God's, the church's, rules, we were open for demons to attack us. And to make it short, you could sin by thinking something. So we were taught to somehow control our thoughts, but give full control to God over every little aspect in our lives, because everything is predestined and we don't have control about anything anyways. But we're still responsible for our actions somehow, and we still have a free will granted from God. While writing this, I really understand how contradicting this is, and it was a core belief of mine. When an adult who looked after you as a toddler tells you this, and there are 500 people who all believed it wholeheartedly, you try to justify it until you really can't anymore. And then everything shatters. Losing faith is something that was so deeply intertwined with your whole existence. It's like part of you just died. Even though you know how ridiculous it was believing in it, and you still feel stupid for not realizing it earlier. So in a nutshell, everything bad you do is because you're not saved. Because for someone who is really saved, it's physically impossible to sin no matter how, and automatically fully your fault. But when you achieve something, it's because God did it. You're never capable of doing or achieving something on your own. You're even unable to think the right, good way. So you're basically nothing and unimportant. But when you come to God, He gives you a purpose He specifically chose for you. You matter to Him. You're worthy of His love. And even though we were taught He is forgiving to everyone and almost everything, if you only follow Him everywhere He leads you. Another bizarre contradiction they teach little children: you're nothing, but with God, you're worthy. It makes me unbelievably mad that there are gradually more and more children who grow up believing this, who are taught that demons, the devil, and hell are around every corner to take them and torture them for eternity if they slip up one tiny bit. That's why I cried myself to sleep for years, begging God to forgive me for saying shit one time, or thinking in my head that I wanted to kiss a boy, not speaking of being attracted to a girl, because of course anything than straight marriage within my church is wrong. Yes, I was expected to have a boyfriend within church, and if he was in the world, I had to convince him to go to church, and he has to love God. We weren't allowed to date before 17, and of course, no premarital sex, but they took it further to prevent it at all costs. You weren't allowed to be alone in a room with your significant other before marriage, so nothing could possibly happen. Holding hands and short hugs were allowed when engaged. So if you grew up there, find a boyfriend and get engaged as fast as possible, because if you fall in love, it must be in God's plan. Because you want to F and then marry as fast as possible, you have to be together at least a year and then be engaged for at least half a year to have your first kiss ever, if you weren't sinful, in front of everybody, and when the pastor says, you may kiss the bride. We were taught that God wants us to be pure and learn to value our partner's personality. They told us girls that if we had a sexual relationship before marriage, you would never know if he really loves you or just wants your body, and that every guy outside church would never love us for our personalities. Another contradiction. These young adults rush into marriage not because they think, wow, I really value my partner as a person. No, they're sex-driven teenagers lying to themselves, which is absolutely not their fault, of course. No one is appreciating anything, and if they are, they're very lucky, because there were maybe 15 people in your age range that you could end up with. Girls were also taught to save themselves because we are like chewing gum, and if you're all chewed up, your godly future husband wouldn't want you, would he? We were told we were pure glasses of water, and if we sleep around before marriage, or even with only one person, every time dirt would fall into our pure water, and no one wants to drink dirty water. But the one thing that stuck with me that my mother, and later on, more older woman, told me was every time you sleep with a man, he takes part of your soul with him. That's why there should be only one guy from the start, so that you don't end up losing your soul. The thought of that terrified me to the core, and I believed it. Now I know it's bullshit, but it was in my head constantly for 5 or 6 years. We were told to cover up so guys don't want sin with their eyes and thoughts. Knee-length skirts and shorts were allowed, and I always hated how they looked on me. And you had to cover your belly and your shoulders at all cost. Cleavage was obviously not allowed, and so weren't tight clothes, only skinny jeans, not leggings, especially when you had a little bit more chest. And if you dared to show a tiny bit of skin, no matter how hot summer was, even if it was accidental, you'd get in trouble. I was in that godforsaken building almost every day, except for Wednesdays where we would meet up with our local little group of girls. There was a leader a few years older than us, and I'm glad mine wasn't as controlling as others and didn't force me too much to work in different groups in church and discuss what our beloved, I could vomit remembering him and his sleazy and narcissistic behavior, pastor taught us on Sunday. I was involved in worship, and my love for singing kind of saved me because that's the only thing I really did because I myself wanted it. I danced, which was okay. It was workout for me and not dancing for God when I think about it. I looked after toddlers once a month during service with other women. I was in the theater group, and when there was an event for teenagers, I was responsible for leading a group of other teenagers to organize it, so everything was done and standing where it belongs. I liked organizing, so I was lucky they just positioned me there, but it was still hella stressful. And I played the piano, which I didn't really enjoy. So there were the basics. I was heavily involved. With 12, you move from being with children to the big service, and you're finally old enough to be part of all the cool things the teenagers did. But then you're also constantly stressed out, which worsened every year because obviously school got harder, but also the church demanded more and more, and suddenly you were thrown into highly responsible tasks, which drained you. When I was 14, I started constantly having headaches. I started drinking coffee because I was exhausted from not being able to sleep, being stressed out and constantly worried that someone would find out my secrets. And now I need a very strong one for it to work. Because in school, I was someone else. I had a different name in my school, my real name. In church, the pastor required my parents to introduce me with a very faraway nickname from my real name because it sounded like a name in the Bible that an evil person had, and if I'd be called that, it would curse me. I did and said what I wanted. It increased gradually because I still tried to be myself, which you could be in church. No. In school, but obviously couldn't do that because no one can. I thought I was being myself in school, and maybe that was myself when I was 14, but I still was the most severe case of a people pleaser. And I always ended up in dependent, toxic friendships because I could never say anything against them. I had no one else who was close to me, so that also hurt me even though I didn't notice at the time. People abused my kindness because in church they told us we had to be nice, and I could do that at least. So I held on to being nice to everyone, helping everyone, and inviting people to come to church who were remotely close to me, which still embarrasses me the most, but you get in trouble when you're not inviting people. I'm so glad I was in a very accepting class. No one was ever really bullied, just mocked for a few things maybe, which I was, for being in that church. And they told me early on, it's a cult. You believe in crazy shit. Stop going there. But we were taught that people who were afraid of the truth always say that. School was kind of a safe place for me, even if I had toxic friendships and got hurt a few times, because we live about 25 kilometers away from church, the cult, and nobody I knew from there could see me. And even though we were taught that God could see everything and is always reading our thoughts, I didn't feel very watched. I was scared shitless when I wore something in school we weren't allowed to wear in church, and I thought I saw someone I knew, so I felt better in school than at home. And that's why my definition of home is something entirely different than that of people who grew up in an emotionally safe home. So what was living in my home like? I'm the first daughter of 3, and therefore my father's precious firstborn. I learned really fast that just keeping quiet, smiling, and doing what I'm told is the best way to avoid any more stressful situations. I hated every form of confrontation, and I still do. When I was young as 3, my father threatened to hit me with a belt, and did it a few times. But I stopped misbehaving or questioning, so no one yelled at me anymore, and no one told me to stand in a corner without looking. So I just learned to not show my emotions at all at home, because emotions cause trouble and distress. They also told us that God and our own intellect, which is controlled by God, must lead us. Emotions come out because of the devil. My father was in control of everything, and to this day, he is still extremely sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, etc. You name it. And he still thinks I have exactly the same opinions as him. He is very critical of my boyfriend, but because he puts on a facade in front of my father as I do, my father likes him. My parents, more my father, still don't want me to have anything premarital, even though they are less strict than before. So yeah, I can't ask for birth control because then they would not let me see my boyfriend. As I said, my father is very controlling and has a very high opinion of himself. Because he is providing for our family, he doesn't have to do anything regarding the house. This is on the women and the 4 girls in the house, because that's what God made us for. Popping out babies, cleaning, and cooking. But I still have to get a degree and a high-paying job. And then I ask myself, what do you want from me? What? In church, we learn that you have to find a job that gives you enough time to be as active as possible in church, while giving birth to as many children as possible and managing your whole household completely alone, because your husband is by God's law above you and there to lead you. How remarkably generous of you to lead me, because I can't decide on anything ever due to always thinking I don't have control anyways. That's why I need to plan everything obsessively and always know and control what's going on. I idolized my father until the realization that we don't have any emotional bond slowly reached me until it hit me hard. I had to organize my phone a certain way and delete messages so in case he would want to go through it, he wouldn't find anything. He wanted me to be his perfect show daughter who has good marks and serves God with all of her existence, and he really did that. In front of him, I am what he wants me to be. I don't know what my mother wants. She just does what my father tells her and silently agrees to what he has to say. Maybe I learned to behave in that way because she did. I'm honestly sorry for her because she never had a chance to study anything that could make her independent because of moving to Germany at 17 or 18 and not being able to speak the language very well. I could cry because no matter how brutal this sounds, her life is over in a way. She is what I never want to be. Whenever they told us how our future will look like, I had a kind of panic that I never felt before. At the time, I suppressed that, but when I think back, my heart rate goes up and I feel like I need to run as fast as I can. And that's why I hate to be dependent on someone. But weirdly, I still end up in situations where I'm highly dependent. Another thing that I can maybe explain now is my reaction to my grandfather's death. He was more of a father to me than my own, and his wife's home, which I also deeply love, felt safe. When I was 11 years old, my grandmother, my grandfather's wife, passed away because of cancer. And I was never allowed to see her while she was sick, nor to attend the funeral. And in that time, I already saw my grandpa rarely. When my parents told me my grandma passed away, I cried one time. I know that I was sad, but I somehow can't recall my immediate emotions from that day. And I thought I'm glad that I still have my grandpa. But he passed away 3 months later, and I wasn't able to see him during those months. When my father emotionlessly told us that his father also passed away, I felt nothing. I didn't cry, no reaction at all, and then I didn't think about it for years. But when I was 14, all of a sudden, all of the emotions I should have felt when I was 11 crushed me harder than ever. It was like reliving the day I was told he was gone forever for almost a year, and I was so confused. Why now? Why didn't I feel anything back then? Because my brain was already way too stressed for an 11-year-old and just didn't process properly. Then 3 years later, something triggered my memories and the horrors began. When I was 16, it hit me again because I found out he committed suicide through my cousin. Back to the cult. So am I still there? No. My parents realized how manipulative literally everything about it was, and without telling anyone there, childhood friends I grew up with included, we went there one last time, and on Sunday, the 23rd of September, 2018, We drove away and never came back. And many others left too. We still meet every Sunday, and I still sing there because I don't want to confront my parents. I really don't want to be there because every time we're there, I'm not really there. I'm just a shell that moves around. During the preaching, which a few men do in turns, I'm always completely zoned out and can only concentrate for a bit if I really try. I don't know what that is or that means, but I absolutely hate it because I can't control it. And sometimes I'm just sad for no reason. I still can't sleep and still get a massive headache and can't stand up properly without strong coffee. I still eat too much stuff. I really shouldn't. And I feel bad for every little bit I eat, but I can't stop. And it also affects all of my relationships, especially with my boyfriend. He sometimes doesn't understand, but he still comforts me and is patient, which I'm really grateful for. And something that comes to mind only now is that my father used to completely lose it when I had a bad mark. I was afraid to come home and always started crying before even telling him. And then he would shout even more, beat the table with his fist, and tell me to stop crying. Now I can control if I'm going to cry or not when something upsets me, and if I want to show my emotions or not. Being a very good liar was essential, and it still is. When my father is mad at me because I don't do the dishes, he still gets very impulsive and shames me because if he works and gives me food and clothing, it's just disrespectful to leave the dishes for too long. And when he stands beside me and doesn't stop while I do the dishes, I just nod my head and say yes. It's the only way to avoid more pain at all cost. There are these moments, but also the ones where he tries to talk to me and ask how I am, and then he tells me how he loves me, his firstborn princess. He tells me that I'm the best daughter someone could have, and that he's so proud of me. And I just smile at him and say thank you. But on the inside, I think, if you really knew who I really am and what I did that you don't have, you wouldn't talk to me anymore. He is proud of the daughter he created for himself that I still am in front of him. And also my mother tries to get closer to me after 16 years of distance and letting the church raise us. And the only thing I would tell her if I was honest for a few seconds in the midst of all the lies I protect myself with, I'm sorry, but it's too late. I don't have any emotional connection to my parents, and I never had. The first 16 years of my life were partly wasted. I felt like someone took my childhood from me. Even my memories are blurry. And I know it's technically not my parents' fault, but I want to blame them so badly. And it makes me so mad that I was born because of the church, because they convinced my father to have children. I was cursed before I even existed. And still, I can recall a few beautiful memories of things I did with my friends there. The sleepovers, summer camp, singing together, playing hide and seek in the big building. All of us connected through our fear of the dangerous outside world and hell. There is no moment in my life where I wasn't afraid that some adult could dream or feel. They taught us that God could reveal things about people to you when you have a strong connection to the Holy Spirit, that I was a dirty sinner that acted differently in school. And it was so frightening because when it's out that you messed up, you can't attend certain rituals like the Holy Communion, and that's when people know. They see that you're not taking part in it, and the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, premarital sex. When a couple did it and someone found out, it made sure by the authorities that in a week, everyone knows. And I wanted to avoid people thinking that at all costs, so I was very aware and on guard at all the time. I made sure I had a different app also open while watching Vampire Diaries on my phone, because there you could switch faster, so my mother or father, who still just burst into my room whenever they want to, would never know I would watch something the devil created. My parents and everyone in the church who was responsible for me always tried to shelter me and get anything with a bad influence away from me. But I still watched what I wasn't allowed to. The internet and myself raised me when my beliefs started to break away. People like Jenna Marble taught me things parents should teach their kids. I educated myself on so much stuff I missed out on and started to build my own opinions and morals from 14 to 16. Basic knowledge like it's okay to not believe what your parents believe was so new to me. And now I just want to move out and study something so I'm always safe. I can't wait for the day where I'm finally going to be financially independent and don't have to rely on my father.